Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the early start. We've got a lot of business, so with that, we'll have Diane lead us in the invocation.
Father, thank you that we can gather here this evening to talk about the future of our city. It's exciting to think about a bright and growing city. And it's also a big responsibility to spend taxpayers' money wisely and think things through carefully. So give us clear minds, give us the capacity for good discussion, help us ask good clarifying questions, and so that we can work together as a team to move the city forward. We thank you for each and every person here in this room. We especially appreciate all of our department heads that have spent so much time preparing things for this evening. And we thank each person here that has read through things and thoughtfully considered things and asked questions ahead of time. We just ask that you lead us and guide us to do the best that we can. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Diane, thank you. Appreciate that. Let the minutes reflect Councilman Jack Wilhite is absent. There are six board members here, council members here, so we do have a quorum. So with that, let's look at the approval of the minutes from July 17th meeting.
So moved.
Is that a motion to approve?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you. And again, welcome to all our visitors tonight. It's a beautiful night. Appreciate you being here to do the business of the city. Lynn, you've got a few reports here. You've got the MediaCom franchise fee, quarterly amount of $262.30.
Yes.
Thank you to MediaCom.
Thank
And
you. Thank you.
then you have presented the July fund report. I assume that reflects all of the first tranche of property tax payments.
We got those in June.
Right, but they're all, obviously, they're recorded in here.
They're in the June report.
Nick, you know how to handle this.
Nope, I'm gonna give her a look. I'm wondering if it's feedback from this thing.
Good job, Nick.
Try that.
Okay. Thank you, Nick.
Still hearing it, Nick.
Yeah. It might just be where this is sitting, if it's catching a speaker or something. Is that any better? Is that
Yes.
better?
So far,
We'll let you know.
Don't ask me. Don't ask me.
that's why Nick's on the IT committee. Figure that stuff out. All right. So any comments or questions with regards to the July fund report? Okay. All right. So let's move into unfinished business. Ordinance 2023-0702. This is the second reading. This is primarily an update on the traffic ordinance. I know Jack has led the charge on this, but you heard his introduction at the last meeting for the first reading. This is primarily just a big cleanup, series of amendments to the traffic ordinance to reflect any changes that have gone on. I know, Cindy, you're involved in the traffic commission as well.
Right, and I think there will probably be a second one maybe
Yep.
coming up. This is just a portion. I tried to keep it a little bit smaller so that you weren't overwhelmed.
City attorney, I know, has been involved in this as well, and again, this is just pretty much cleanup ordinance.
Yeah, if you recall, about a year ago, we had about a decade's worth of cleanup that we spent a significant time on at a couple council meetings, and Traffic Commission's doing really great. They've, between Lance Grubbs and Joel Beam, think those guys know every little nook and cranny of this city, so, and they know where the signs are, so it's really interesting hearing them talk. But anyhow, that being said, with all the additions that we've had with new development, roads changing how they were, streets changing how they were, it's just been cleaned up to make sure that they're correct, and then they've carefully, and I think Jack Wilhite's done a lot of this, carefully looked at all of it and found some are repetitious, some are inconsistent, and it's a much better product now to have these ordinances updated. And as Cindy said, there will be more to come. They just wanted to give you 1 month's traffic meetings worth of changes, and I know there's been some others that have been proposed and will be submitted soon.
So as you can see, there's one-way stop signs contemplated, two-way stop signs, and parking prohibitions from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. I think Jack did a pretty good job of describing that at the last meeting. Joel, I appreciate you being here. Don't want to put you on the spot. Any thoughts or comments? Okay. All right, again, thank you for your work. Any questions from the council? Again, I entertain a motion on second reading, but before that, just make sure there's no questions or concerns. Okay,
I move to approve the ordinance 2023-0702 on second reading.
thank you, Jack. Is there a second?
I'd second.
All right, Jerry, thank you. Any final discussion, questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ordinance passes 6-0. Thank you. Item number 2, Jeremy's going to come up and lead us in a public hearing for the ordinance approving an additional appropriation from the Forest Tech funds that will be used for the purchase of the Marsh property. We didn't quite have enough in there, so we needed an additional appropriation. I think is what it boils down to. There were funds in the tech park reserves. So, Jeremy?
Yes, so we're purchasing the Marsh property for $1.25 million, and we needed some additional funds in that to cover the closing cost and purchase price. So I'm requesting the additional appropriation of $100,000 into that fund. This is the second reading and the public hearing, so you have to open it up to the public for any public input. But then afterwards, hopefully you pass it, and we'll be purchasing the Marsh building, hoping to close on it sometime next week.
So before I open up the meeting to the public hearing, do you all have any questions of Jeremy? All right, with that, I will ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak on behalf of the petition, speaking for the additional appropriation. Anyone wishing to speak on behalf of? All right. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the additional appropriation? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? All right, with that, I will close the public hearing, turn it back to the council, and ask for your final comments, and then whatever your desire is on second and final reading for the additional appropriation.
Well, as I said at the last meeting, I'm glad we're taking this step, and hopefully this can give the best and highest use of this property to serve our community. So-
All right,
We discussed it today, about 2 hours ago at our redevelopment meeting, and it was a good discussion, and I don't know if Jeremy cares to share any of the things we talked about with the public, but it's pretty exciting, and got unanimous approval to move forward on this project. It's going to be good.
Yeah, so we've talked about a lot of things, but the redevelopment commission signed a contract with Retail Strategies, who's going to be coming into the community this week to market the entire city for new commercial development. At the same time, after telling them that we were in the process of purchasing the Marsh building, and I wanted them to be actively adding that to their list of properties they marketed, they expressed interest and wanted to develop the property, so the redevelopment commission entered into a 12-month agreement with them to give them the exclusive right to develop that property. They know what we'd like to see, i.e. a grocery store. So they're going to go out and try to find some tenants for that facility over the next 12 months. And that contract was approved, I think, last month. So it's already been signed and executed, and they're meeting us on Wednesday to go through the building. So hopefully over the next 12 months, they can get some good tenants in there that will help our residential developments on the south side.
Will we continue to own that property and lease the space, or are we looking to sell it to someone?
We would not own it. We would be development partners, i.e. being, we'd be putting the property into the developer's hands to redevelop once he would find a tenant that he feels has successfully put a project together. What that means yet, I don't know. Does that mean that we're giving them the property, selling them the property? I don't know how that'll all work out in the end. It depends on who they bring to the table.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, we will not own the property.
Okay.
The important thing here is having control of the property. And first thing we need to do is acquire the property through this additional appropriation. So I'm asking you on second and final reading, if there's a motion to approve ordinance, the additional appropriation ordinance,
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
2023-0703. All right?
I'll
Thanks,
second.
Mike. A second. Josh, appreciate it. All right. Any final comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? I hear you all loud and clear. I think this is what I've been hearing since the city made the decision to get involved with this property. There's a lot of anticipation as to what we're going to do, and we've got it set up where we're going to run as fast as we can to try and find someone to do this. The redevelopment commission talked at length about retail strategies and looking for retailers for the entire community. And when this came up, it just fit right into that. And that group basically approached us and said they had a big desire to try and identify a tenant. So we're in a great spot right now. And I think your work tonight to approve those funds so that we can acquire that is the first step. I'd love to see something happen here quickly, but we just got to do the best we can. And I think that's what you all are doing tonight. We're doing the best we can. We're making it available. We're going to control it. And hopefully we'll have something really nice down there. So, and hopefully a grocery store. All right, Jeremy, thank you. All right, let's move into new business. First item, I spoke with Lynn, and I'll let her discuss this, but it appears that she had done some further research and found out that we do not need to consider Resolution 2023-0801. This resolution of reducing encumbrances does not need to occur according to the PLGF.
We had our workshop with our field rep last week, and she said that we didn't necessarily need to do this, but we do need to do the one that we do at the first of the year when we're carrying that money over.
Right. So,
So then is the rest of the year just at your office's discretion to make those, and you don't have to run it through anything?
we just don't have to do the resolution tonight.
Yeah.
So, we will move on. Don't need to consider that. So item number 2 would be a transfer of funds, Resolution 2023-0802. This involves utilization of some park department money to help cover the costs of the Center Lake, Zimmer Biomet Center Lake Pavilion renovation. If you remember, Zimmer Biomet gave us a grant of $2.5 million for this project. I think we're up around 2.85 something. There's $300,000 in the edit that was put us in this year's edit fund to assist, but we're over that, so we need a little bit more. And Larry wants to talk about a transfer tonight for
Yeah, I
that.
would just like to, as Joe said, transfer park funds from park insurance to park buildings to cover some of those change orders at the Zimmer Biomet Center Lake Pavilion. It'd be from Park Insurance to Park Buildings, and the amount was $56,000.
And Larry, I know you've also put in other funds, I think for the AV equipment, so.
Maybe security, things of that sort, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So his fund is making some significant contributions to what's going to be a beautiful facility. We're probably a couple weeks from going through the punch list, and we're going to have a ribbon cutting in late September. So, but to do that again, we need you all to consider and hopefully approve the transfer of those funds from 130 from Park Insurance to Park Buildings.
I'll make the
Medical
motion.
insurance.
That's
health
medical insurance, 130, yep.
Not property liability insurance.
I'll make a
Pardon me?
motion, we pass resolution.
Not property
Not property
liability.
liability, yeah. It's 130.05.
Now?
Yeah, no.
Okay. I'll make a motion, we pass resolution 2023-0802.
Yeah, before I second that, Larry, thanks. A couple hours of your time last week, and about an hour of it was visiting the pavilion. It's absolutely beautiful. So I appreciate not only the visit, but giving me an opportunity to look at it and your leadership to make this all happen. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll
It's going to be a
second that.
beautiful place.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
Quite an addition.
Second.
So you second. All right, great. Any final discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, and again, along with Jeff's line, I want to certainly, obviously as a city, thank the Zimmer Biomet Foundation. There'll be more of that to come, but let's not forget where they put us, and the sign is on the building, Zimmer Biomet Center Lake Pavilion. It's a beautiful sign. So, and I've heard it's even more beautiful at night, so get down there, if you can, take a look at it. So thank you. Item 3 is Resolution 2023-0803. This is the Warsaw Wayne Township Fire Territory. This would be a transfer of funds as well. Just as a note, this was approved, I believe, at the Fire Territory Board at the last meeting. Is that correct, Chief?
That's correct.
Yep. All right. Floor is yours.
Well, this was just a reimbursable grant that was applied for and received last year and actually accepted in November and installed at the training facility out of wastewater. And IDHS has just now reimbursed us in July. So the wheels turned a little slow. It got recuperated, which is fantastic, and it just needs to go back into the equipment replacement fund.
So it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I move to approve Resolution 2023-0803.
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, pass 6-0, thank you. Item number 4, 2023-0805 is a cemetery transfer of funds from the PERM fund. I know, Hal, you got a project you want to talk about? And,
Yeah, I'm asking your permission to change this $14,000 over to a different account. Many, a year or so ago, you guys might remember the preacher stand deal that we were going to tear it down and we're not. We put a lot of money into it. Painting personally did all the labor. This is actually a walkway to go from the new stair, the steps coming up to the preacher stand. We had this money allocated for asphalting. Dustin and I talked, and he's pretty slamming this year with asphalt. He came and did a little repairs for me in a couple areas, and I said, let's worry about asphalting next year, because he's had so much to do. So I want to use this money in to do this walkway, is what I'm asking you to turn it over. So he's going to come this fall to put the walkway in for me.
How will it be handicapped accessible?
No, with the stairway,
It's
no,
gonna be-
yes and no. They can come up by the bathrooms up in the ramp
On the
and get
walkway.
there, but it's not tied together. That may be something in the future, but we're gonna have to
Okay.
cut down a pretty big tree to do that. So to make it
Right.
over. But this is, I put new steps in the front, back when I did the retaining wall around the office. And this will just go and curve and tie into it and make a platform. In the preacher stand, so you know, I poured a new step in front. We've repainted and done a lot of stuff to it. So it's up and running to be used. And now we have also cameras on the office that can see that, so I can watch it at night if something happens. And so this will be like the last part of this to improve that preacher stand.
I was out there visiting with Hal, and he showed me what he's going to do just last week, I guess, wasn't Hal? And it sounds like it's going to be a very good project. I think we should all get behind it.
So sounds like that might be a motion, Jerry.
Well, I guess I could make it into a motion. Okay, I'll move we accept it.
Thanks, Jerry. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Cindy. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hal, thank you for all your work. Appreciate it. Item number 5, I actually had discussed this with Jack. I was hoping he'd be here tonight, but this is a transfer letter for additional facade grant funds. A transfer resolution is not required because we're within the same 300s. We're going from 390 to 320. It just requires a letter of transfer from the council president because it's the council budget. But I asked Jack to bring it to the council to make you all aware of this. It will have to go to the Board of Works because we're going to have to amend our agreement with Main Street. But essentially what we're doing is we've got some money there's extra requests for facade grants this year. Given the Hyatt Palma study where the recommendation was to go from 5 to 10,000, and when I get into the budget here in a little bit, you'll see that I'm proposing that we do that. But in the meantime, for the rest of this year, with 2 businesses asking for facade grants of up to 5,000 and potentially a third, I had asked Jack if he would sign the letter transferring that 15,000 from council miscellaneous to council professional services. So with that, I just want to present it to you all, and if there's a concern with that, we can pull back. But I thought in talking with Jack and a few others, there seemed to be some agreement that anything we can do to continue to move our downtown improvement forward made sense. So
I know Rob Parker had reached out to me to indicate that he does have 2 and possibly 3 more people that would like to take advantage before the end of the year. And hate to discourage people because they're going to put a lot more money into it than what, we're going to be
It'll
giving them.
just go with our new streetlights.
Yeah.
all the above. Well, I will ask for just a thumbs up if you want to do this. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thumbs up, good. All right. Again, it's not required, but I did want it to be publicly discussed. So we will take this additional 15,000. We'll have to amend our contract with Main Street to allow 3 more, up to $5,000, up to 3 more uses of the facade. And this is a great problem to have, to be quite frank with you.
Really good.
So,
Yeah, to be out of the money by
good.
just a little over halfway into the year.
yeah.
That's great.
All right, great, thank you very much. All right, let's jump into the budget presentations. Tonight, as you can see, we'll have airport, cemetery, parks, HR, clerk treasurer, mayor, and fire. Just a few comments on this year's budget. Looking back at our history from 2013 for the past 10 years, our rate has only been lower than what it is now. Looks like two times. So we've been very successful. And I can tell you our budget hasn't been lower. Our budget has increased. The levy has increased from 10 million to 16 million. But we've kept our rate down almost at 2013 level. 2013, the rate was $1.17, and in 2023, the rate was $1.18. So 10 years later, $6 million greater in the levy. We've been able to keep that rate down by growing, stimulating investment in the community. But there's also the factor of reassessment. Properties have increased in value. That increases the assessed value. But so our hope is this year, we've got a 4% levy growth factor that we are allowed, which means we can raise an additional 4% from last year's maximum levy. both on fire territory and on the city. That 4% is designed to handle cost of living adjustments, increases in costs of goods and services. So it's a 4% increase, but it can increase, it will certainly increase our tax rate unless our AV is broadened, and we can keep spreading and broadening the tax base. So, again, that's been our MO for the last 10, 12, 13 years, and we'll continue to look for that. We do not have our assessed valuation certified yet, and I'd love to be able to tell you what it's going to be, but I don't know. And I've talked with Lynn. She's tired of me calling her every day, hey, did we get it yet? Hey, did we get it yet? Because this is how I look at our budget. And I know you're all obviously very considering that as well. So, but we've been able to continue to provide the services at a pretty flat rate, and we want to continue to be able to do that. We did suggest a 3% increase to the board, or to the department heads for salary increases. Denny and I've also been working on using the AIM salary survey and making sure that our compensations are comparable with other third-class cities close to our size. I think Denny's used about 10 different communities and averaged those out. We look at external wages, we look at the supply and demand within the city. And Denny will be working on the salary ordinance that will be coming up later, probably have to be considered sometime in October. But none of that's final yet, but what we have put in the budget is just across the board 3%. So, but, before Denny was here, Jennifer did a great job, and now Denny's carried that tradition on of being very vigilant about looking at those salaries and making sure we're competitive, that we're compensating our employees as they should be fairly. So, the other thing I want you to consider this year, we have actually adjusted our health insurance payments. In the past, we've over budgeted for increases of anywhere 10 to 12%. And it's always inflated the budget right up front. And then we have big line one cuts at the end. And when we find out we've only got a 2 or 3% increase, and we've got all that money that we eliminate with line one cuts. I wanted to be a little more realistic this year, and we were able to do that because AIM Medical Trust gave us a preliminary number last month to utilize, and I had all the department heads figure in that number. The preliminary number that was given for our renewal, our health insurance renewal, was 2.6%. So I have kept a 4% increase in the budget because that's just a preliminary number. Next month, I sit on the AIM Medical Trust, and we will meet, and they will make the final recommendations. So I think it's next Thursday or Friday, we will know what our rate increase is going to be. But preliminarily, it's at 2.6%. So this budget reflects a 4% renewal increase, not 10 or 12. And as we go through, you'll see how that is really keeping things down. So with that, let's see. I think that's it for now. Let's get started.
May I ask one other question?
Sure.
I saw in some budgets a reference to a citywide copier or that some people put in their budget. Could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I think the guy standing up here is ideal to do that because Nick and the IT committee have gone out and looked for ways for us to be more efficient and save on our copies. And this will do it, but it's going to require upfront purchases because to enjoy these price per copies, we have to use their equipment, and it has to be done between now and the end of the year. So with that, Nick, let me turn it over to you. Before you do your budget,
Yep.
if you'd answer that great question.
I can do my best. I don't have any of my notes, so I'm going off at the top of the dome
That's
here.
okay, it just was referenced so many times in people's budget, and I didn't know what it was.
There are several departments whose printer contracts are coming up due at the end of this year. To sign a new print contract, that typically involves purchasing new equipment. And so previously, each department would go out and I kind of managed my own thing. Each department did their own thing. And the mayor asked the IT group, look, doesn't it make sense for us to centralize this, bring this together underneath one contract, have similar equipment across the city? A great example, just upstairs, if the planning department ran out of ink one day, if they've got the same printer and copier that the mayor's office does, if they don't have a spare sitting on the shelf, they can run over and grab that. Also, having familiar equipment throughout the city, it's going to lower those costs overall. Right now, we're estimating anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000 a year in savings, just in the print side of things. And then by reducing some of the equipment, there's some areas where, maybe we don't need as many printers in an office if a centralized copy machine makes sense. And so by doing an audit citywide, we're looking at saving a little over $35,000 in upfront costs. The downside, there are some departments who have, 2 or 3 year old equipment that will need to be replaced, but that's one of those things that's just going to have to be done up front. Similar to when the city went under one contract with Wildman, we worked with each of the departments to pull together and get the same cost across the city for similar services, uniforms, carpets, whatever that item was. So this is doing the same thing, just in the print world.
So to enjoy those cost per copy savings, we have to use our equipment.
Yep.
And they are fronting the equipment between now and the end of the year. So they've actually, instead of having us go with the drop dead date right now, they're allowing us to get started now, or they built in 4.5 months remaining till the end of the year. So a department could use, if they've got funds left over this year, they could use the funds for those purchases for the new equipment in this budget, or they could wait till the 2024 budget. So we gave the department heads, this is just an example of types of things we discuss in department head meetings. And this was it's a big project. It's something we've been wanting to do for a while. Some departments have all kinds of inkjet printers, and the cost per copy is obscene. So trying to centralize with a larger machine, create more efficiencies. This company came in and went through each department and made recommendations. So this has been a well-thought-out initiative by the IT Governance Committee, who I continue to give kudos for managing a ever-changing, ever more important technology world that we're in. And this is just one project that I had talked to them about, and they were able to come up with some pretty significant savings. So, but
Diane?
you're right, in this year's budget, there may be some costs for printers, and that's what that's for.
Okay.
The other unique thing with the company that we're looking at using, they do not charge a upfront fee for their maintenance. All of the maintenance of the equipment is built into that cost per copy. So once the equipment is purchased, we will pay 0.6 of 1 cent for any black and white copy and 4.5 cents for any color copy. And that is the only cost we pay. So when we need toner, when a machine breaks, all of that is covered underneath that contract price, and there's no upfront billing. So we do not have to go in and say, we're going to estimate 20,000 prints at the airport, for example, with all of our monthly billing with the fuel sales. We don't have to worry about that. They only charge us for the prints we actually make. So if you have a printer that sits idle, the person's on maternity leave, and it doesn't get used the entire month, your bill is zero. If, the Parks Department is printing off the annual Parks Guide and they're doing a big print, they might have an expensive month, but knowing those fixed costs up front is going to allow us department heads to much more accurately budget for those costs, because we're not guessing on, how much is toner going to be this month. We know exactly how much we're paying, and this contract is for a year.
Okay.
One question I have, Nick, then, okay, is it kind of a cookie cutter thing, or is there some variance by department according to what their needs are?
So we went through each department and really looked at what what are their operations. I'm going to pick on Whitaker out at the police department. The way that their building is set up and the nature of what they do, they have certain areas where that printer can't even be tied to a network because of the type of information and documents that they print. So we had to take all of that into account, and we did work with the department heads, and I was just talking with Dustin this afternoon. We missed a printer in the maintenance shop, but the supervisors had a printer. I called up this company, and they're already revising the quote to get back to us, and they said they don't think it's going to change the quote at all. They're just going to give us that printer for free.
Yeah, like I said, that company came in and they went through department by department and looked at the specific needs in every department. I mean, look, the fire station's got at least 3 different buildings that they're dealing with. You know, our office upstairs, we got one big printer that we share with HR. So all the departments are different. This is really a difficult thing to do, and they found a vendor that can save us money, that gives us good service, and I think we're moving on it. But again, you all have to understand what's going on and hopefully approve it.
Yeah, thank you. 'Cause-
You're welcome.
Will it be an annual contract? Is that how it'll work?
Correct. So we are recommending, and we'll be going to Board of Works after working with the mayor, but we will be recommending a 1-year contract with this company. If it works really well, all the departments are pleased, everything is going smoothly, they are willing to do a longer contract than 1 year. That's going to be, they said, we prefer 1-year contracts because if we don't hold up to our end of the bargain, we want to give our customers a way to easily get out instead of tying into a 5, 6, 7-year contract with a company you're not happy with. We have 2 departments that are currently using them, building and planning and mayor and HR are using them. They're here at least once a month, just checking on the machines, looking at print count, checking toner life, making sure all of the print drums are working correctly. So far, we've heard no complaints.
This is just another example of, you remember the organizational review we did 4 or 5 years ago with Baker Tilly? And the IT group was the top priority, and it was designed to get started and centralize a lot of our services, and the printers is one that we're catching up
Yep.
to. But again, that type of operational and organizational efficiency is continuing in the city, and this is just another example of it. So, all right, Nick, you're on.
All righty.
This is budget number
2206.
2206.
Yep, we're going to start with 2206. So that is the airport general operating budget. And starting out in personnel services, as Mayor alluded, we budgeted for a 3% increase in the annual salary. We did have a few staffing changes last year, which changed up our employee benefits and just how, where those people are pulling insurance from. So at the end of the day, we are going to see about a 2.3% increase in our personnel services with those few insurance changes.
I want to make a quick comment. When you look at the 23 insurance, this is certainly not a it's not a 4% increase. It's actually a decrease. And what happens is that number is probably what was put in last year, figuring that 10% increase that we asked departments to budget. That number may have been taken from last year's budget, so that wasn't the actual amount of what they paid for insurance last year. So every item you see in all these budgets, Denny gave us an exact number based on this. There's 2 different plans, and there's 4 different levels, where it's an employee, employee spouse, employee family, and employee with child. Yeah. So there's 8 different numbers, and those are the numbers based on 4% of the actual number from last year. So while it looks like the medical is going down, it is still going to go up 4% from what it was last year. But these numbers were just, a lot of these numbers are inflated from being budgeted much higher last year. And you'll see this on all the budgets. Sorry, Nick.
Nope, you're just fine. Any questions before we move on to the supply section? All right, in supplies, obviously, we just talked about printers, so I did budget some extra for the office, or for the printer project. So that obviously went up quite a bit from 3,000 to 11,500 next year. That is a one-time change. I am hoping that we can find some money in the airport budget this fall to be able to encumber those funds this year, and then we can use that as a line one cut next spring. But we just kind of have to get through a couple other projects that we are currently working on, make sure we don't have any cost overages we're not expecting. Other than that, repair and maintenance went up 20% from 25,000 to 30,000, and that's just the ongoing supplies, our aging automated weather observation system. Parts are getting harder to find, and so we would like to get that replaced. Unfortunately, we aren't going to be doing that next year. It's about $250,000 to replace that equipment, but we just needed to budget a little bit extra just in case one of those boards goes out. We had a scare earlier this year. We thought, it's actually called the pizza box, and we thought that went out. That's about a $6,000 piece of equipment. Luckily, it was just one board we were able to get fixed. It was about $600 instead of $6,000. So that's why we needed to put just a little bit extra in there for next year. Any questions, or can we move on to other services and charges? All right, so legal fees, professional services, which is our legal, our engineering, contracted maintenance, weather subscriptions, all that kind of stuff is going up about 15%, went from 65,000 to 75,000. Main reason for that is we have a lot more engineering projects going on next year, and we needed to have a little bit extra in that budget just in case the FAA throws something at us we weren't expecting that we need to get our engineers on board with. Printing and advertising, we're going from 1,000 to 10,000. I'm going to be going to my board tomorrow night, Board of Aviation Commissioners. We would like to partner with Orange Marketing Group and start some social media at the airport. We have a group of line techs and a couple new supervisors at the airport who have a real passion for trying to get some more pilots involved flying in from other airports. We hosted our first pancake breakfast in quite a few years. We had over 70 aircraft fly in that morning just to come out for that breakfast. We sold a lot of fuel, and we had we actually ran out of pancake batter. We had to run over to Walmart and buy some more in the middle of it. And a lot of guys that were here wanted to interact with our Facebook page, take pictures. We don't have a very strong social media presence, and so we're going to be partnering with Orange Marketing to hopefully move forward and get some more presence in that field, just to get that name of the airport out to other pilots. Insurance, we just did a standard.
Can I just ask you a question on there? With the logo, like, are we going to get a new sign?
Possibly.
Okay.
So the logo that we have is such a small resolution, and we don't have a larger resolution. It's actually becoming an issue when we're printing checks, when we're printing the board letterhead. And anytime we do graphics on the trucks, it's 300 by 300 pixels. It's like this big on a screen. And so we really need to update that. And I think a new logo would go really far with that. We'd like to see some ideas before we move forward with that, but that is something we'd like to look at next year.
It would just help reflect the good service that we give to have a logo that looked like it was in this century.
I don't know this for a fact. I was told once that a previous airport manager made our current logo with Microsoft Word clip art. I don't know if that actually happened or not, but it's been, I've been flying out of this airport for 33, almost 34 years, and the logo's been the same since I was a kid. And, we definitely want to honor tradition and our heritage, but we also need to look at, bringing ourselves into the 21st century and really moving that airport forward.
I know when you look at it, it seems like, oh, that's, a big increase, but I think it's like way overdue.
Yeah. Insurance, aviation insurance is becoming a very firm market. A couple more companies dropped out of that market last year, and so we are having to get pretty creative with how we set up our blanket insurance out at the airport, just because there's not many providers that are interested in the liability side. And so that is why we are still budgeting for a 10%. I always hope that it comes in less than that, but right now in our market, I just don't know. Rentals, uniform and equipment. The main reason for the rental increase is we have a staff now that are doing a lot more of the pavement maintenance in-house. We utilize as much of the street department's equipment as we can. However, they also are out paving roads, doing pavement maintenance, and there's times that they just do not have the equipment available for us to borrow. And so we need to go out and rent some of that equipment from time to time. I've spoken with Dustin and with Damien both to see if it makes sense for the airport to purchase our own equipment. Some of the, I'm talking like the big gas-powered air compressors. We would not utilize it enough for it to make sense for the airport to go out and make a capital purchase versus renting it for, $400 or $500 for a week. So that's why we do need to have that increase in the rental line there. And then the last one is just, like I was saying, the AWAS maintenance fees and subscriptions. We do have an annual agreement. That agreement has not gone up in 3 years, but that contract comes up in October. And so I'm budgeting about a 15% increase. Again, I hope that contract doesn't go up, but with the cost of everything else going up, I'd really like to make sure we've got enough money for that. And then on to capital outlays. That's the big one. So you guys will see a very large increase there, and that is due to the several projects that we have ongoing out at the airport. So currently, we have the power line project. We are in the middle of that project. All of the steel has been ordered. We are hoping to break ground in the spring, and that project will be completed by November of '24. So that we are going to have some big drawdowns on that project next year. We are working on a runway safety area improvement program for the airport. That was a big push by the FAA, where there is a box around every runway called a runway safety area, and the FAA did a study and said that they wanted all airports to become compliant with their new rules. And so we are working with our engineering firm. That project is about 60% complete, but will most likely carry over into next year. We are rehabilitating one of our taxiways, or taxi lanes, the corporate taxi lane that connects from Taxiway Alpha, that's our east-west taxi lane, up to the main corporate users, the Zimmer Biomets, the Air Cargos, Imagers. That taxi lane is, I believe, 43 or 44 years old, has never been repaved or reconstructed. And so we, working with Representative Snow, we were able to receive a $2 million grant through the state, and that should cover the cost of that project. But part of that $600,000 is $200,000 of contingency funds, just in case we cut into the dirt and find something we're not expecting. We want to make sure that we are covered on that. We did just do core samples on that about 3 weeks ago, and we have not received those yet, but they did core samples anywhere from 10 feet all the way down to 50 feet, just to see what that base and sub-base looks like, so that our engineers know as best they can moving into that project what we're going to encounter. We are also going to be starting the environmental and design portion for our north-south taxiway. That's the second oldest pavement on the field right now, and so we are hoping to get that reconstructed in '25. So that project, or the design and the environmental study for that, will be happening next year. And then the FAA, we have not done a wildlife hazard and assessment study in several years to see how animals are affecting the airfield. Do we have any issues that we need to be addressing? And so that's just something that the FAA wanted us to work on, so we've got a grant for that. And then the last one, we have received a $1 million grant from the IEDC to go towards whatever project is most needed at the airport. And that is most likely, it's not 100%, but most likely going to be going towards our instrument landing system. The ILS has been down for a few years. Part of it has gone inoperative, and the FAA had decommissioned that type of system, and we can't fix it. We have to replace it. And so that's about $1,070,000 installed for that system. So that's also reflected in that improvements other than buildings line. And then machinery and equipment. We're currently working with the county to purchase a couple old single axle plow trucks from them that they were going to be getting rid of. And we just need, one of the trucks had a plow, the other truck did not. They both have belly blades. We needed some extra money to be able to put some plows on that equipment and get those fixed up, and that's where that increase in the machinery and equipment budget was from.
Nick,
So-
you mentioned a crew car in there,
Yep,
and I think you purchased that this year.
we did. Yep, we got that this year. We were lucky to get that. It came in on lease over at Rice Ford, so we purchased that last month. So we have one new crew car. We are still, Brian is graciously letting us borrow the old wastewater utility Chevy Impala. So we are still using that. If we can find another deal like we did, we may be able to fit that in next year, but most likely that money is going to be used for snow removal equipment. Now that we've got a pretty reliable, good car for
I'm
for our
excited
town.
about that.
Yeah, yep.
All right, questions?
Any questions at all? I just have to say, we're going to bring in just shy of $12 million in grants next year between the state and the feds. So I think it's a pretty good return on our investment with those capital expenses there, so.
That's a lot of money.
All right.
All right, thank you, guys.
Appreciation.
Thank you.
You want to go?
Oh,
through
yeah, sorry.
4652.
I always forget about that.
It's not in order, it's just the very last tab. because we
Yep,
got
it's
that
the very
in.
last tab. So it's 4652, that is our depreciation fund. I get questions about it every year. No, we do not have, it's not, it's just what it's always been called. It is our capital improvement fund. So every dollar that the airport makes in fuel sales, oil sales, hangar rent, land lease, cash lease, 95% of that money goes into my general fund, the 2206 we just discussed. 5% of those monies go into 4652. And we are going to be pulling just about all of that money out next year to help cover some of these costs on these capital plans. So we're budgeting $170,000 on that one.
If I may ask a question on the money that's coming in from the state and Fed, is that all in one year, or is that over a multi-year timeline,
That
or
will be next year.
next year? And is that all grant money? We don't have to, it's not a split 80/20 or?
We will have 5% of the power line project, so that project total is I printed it out because I figured I'd get a question about it. The power line project is going to total $7,967,202. The FAA will pay for $7,170,482. The state will pay for $398,360, and then we will also pay $398,360. Most of our grants with FAA and NDOT are 90/10. We pay 10, and then NDOT kicks in 5% of that, so it's really 95/5. And then the grants from the state they're just, if the cost of the taxi lane winds up being less than $2 million, it is a 100% covered grant. If we need to tap into that overage because we find something when we're digging, that's why we're budgeting for that, just in case. But if we come in under budget, that would be a 100% grant. Same thing with the instrument landing system.
Good job.
So,
Nick, help me out, I think you're looking at the paper I saw a couple of weeks ago.
yep,
Over the next 10 years, is it almost 21 million coming in?
correct. $21,593,332.22.
So 12 million now, but in 10 years, there'll be another about 10 million. So you see this, it's very deceiving. What do you need $170,000 for? To help with that 5%, to help with the multi-millions that the state and federal government is saying, you need it at that airport. Am I okay
Correct.
saying that, Nick?
You are absolutely correct.
A
So
lot of money.
Yeah.
we will locally spend just shy of $900,000 over the next 10 years to receive that 21.6 million.
So 1 million to get 21 million because the state and federal government says you need that out there at that community airport.
And the nice thing with that, a lot of people say, well, that's just taxpayer money, that's taxpayer money. That is fuel taxpayer money. All of those state and federal programs where we are receiving those funding outside, this appropriation from that Representative Snow helped with was a different bucket of money. But traditionally, all of our funds come from fuel excise tax that is collected on selling 100 low lead and Jet A. So we are trying to be as self-sufficient as we can.
So commercial, the commercial use of
Yep.
those, not local, but the commercial taxing. Yep.
And what when we sell fuel, that fuel that we send 20 cents to the state and I think it's 37 cents to the FAA to help fund those programs, and that cost is built into our price that we charge our customers. So, yeah, I think it's a pretty good return on our investment.
Yeah.
All right, Nick will be around for a while to answer your questions, either tonight or into the future as we evolve into this budget. You know, a lot of these details are continuing to evolve as far as specific costs and future grants. So
And
I know it's a big shuffle, but
I need to get running, but I did print these out just in case the council would like to see exactly where those fundings are coming from.
Nick, thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's a sheet. Is that
You
the
get a
one?
color copy, 4 points.
Exactly.
Nick, thanks.
Is this 4.6 cents?
Exactly.
It's legal size.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
that's certainly a challenging budget. And our attempts earlier this year to create an airport authority will continue, from what I understand,
Right.
into the future. All right. Hal, you're up.
How's the budget, 205, tab 2205?
Man, am I good. It's right there.
All there? The first two items, as you know, the 3% increase, and like Joe said on the benefits was 4, what we figured in. You can see the difference there. Supplies, we went up. I apologize in this printer thing. I guess I was a little misinformed or not sure. I didn't put my money in for next year for those. We'll find it. Nick gave me paperwork, and I think we just have 2 desktop copiers. It's just under 2,000, I think. We'll find to take care of that to be part of the copy thing there. So it's not in that office supply. We'll find it. You go on down into 23, which is a repair and maintenance, up 7.4. Basically, cost of equipment, repair stuff has been going up. 22, which is our fuel, we were able to maintain this year. I had upped it last year, and we're doing okay, so I did not up it this year. Next thing would be communication, transportation. We went up 1,000 due to we're going to look into some software, get with the IT, and maybe purchase some software. Guess your fleet insurance that was given to me by Lynn for the fleet went up 5%.
So just an FYI, this is our first year with our new carrier, and hopefully the 5% will be enough because we don't know.
For
We
sure.
just started our policy in February, so they didn't have enough history yet to give me a firm figure.
Next item was changed is 36 equipment. That's mainly tree removal and stuff. Last year, we had to do a security upgrade at the shop and our computer system, so I was able to take that out. It was a one-time fee. Equipment and the uniforms going up, just wasn't too sure if Wildman was going to go up, and as you know, I added another employee last year, so I was just covering that, make sure there was plenty in there. So the last thing was my machinery equipment. This one, we were down 10%. Right now, with the street department helping me out and my repairs and stuff, we took 2 of the old dump trucks last year and we put new beds on them instead of buying new dump trucks because I had low mileage and there was no need. Talked to Damien, he said let our crew put those on, so they fabbed and put those on, so we're not having to buy new. So they've done a great job with my equipment. I do appreciate them. They're working on stuff. Right now, my ToolCat is down. It's one of my good machines, so we had some front-end problems, so they have it over there. They came and got it right away, and we're working on that, so to get that up and running. So machinery and equipment at the cemetery, since I started 16 years ago, we're in really good shape. It's pretty much now just being frugal or just trying to be right on when to trade it in. Because now, more expenses is mowers. As you know, we mow the police department and take care of that grounds, and so I have 4 zeros now instead of 3. What we've been doing is trying to extend the life of one, and we take it over there because we only mow once a week over at the police department, and then we trade that one off and bring a new one in and bring another one down. We're trying to gain a year is what we're trying to do out of the mowers. But they run hard, so I mean, we get 3 years out of them, it's good, we get good trade-in value usually after 3. So that's why you see the equipment coming down. We're pretty good on equipment right now, as far as what we have. Next year, in that equipment fund, will be another Gator. One of our Gators is getting a little old, and we have good return out of it if I get rid of it next year and purchase another one, so we'll upgrade to that one. So the machinery equipment, we're doing okay right now. Nothing I see in the future unless something new, and we'll find out if we can afford it or whatnot. The tool cats are very expensive, great machine though, great machine. So we looked into one of those, to trade in that Gator on a tool cat's gonna be a little too much to do right now, so we're not gonna do that, so we'll live with the one, and that's okay. So, basically, total budget, 5.5. That is actually 2,000 under last year, what you guys approved. But then after we did line, 2 cuts and stuff, we came down, so that was based off, so I'm kinda still in the same frame as last year in total budget, is what I tried to do. So it does show an increase as far as what we used after the line cut we did last year. Joe tried to scare me and wanted 100,000, and I couldn't give it to him, I gave him 57. So, and he's got me pinching right now. So anyway, that's where you see. Any questions for me in my normal budget here, my 2205?
Questions?
Hal, do you purchase these mowers or do you lease? If you trade them every 3 years?
No, I purchase. Normally, now they have gone up, so don't hold me to it. Normally, these are like $14,000 mowers that with trade-in I get for 7, 8 in that area. This last one, this new one went up a little bit due pandemic, whatever you want to call it. Everything's flying off as far as pricing. But I have a good relationship with Bobcat with them. And so we go through them. They know our maintenance program and what we do, and now with the street and how we can get the data off. So they usually give me really good return on my mowers. We just found out, they came and apologized. There's a hydro system in it. They weren't telling me to change after so many hours. And so we started doing that. The street does that for me, actually increases the value of that mower, as long as I keep doing the hydros in it, which allows the steering and stuff and everything. So right now, it's been pretty good. We get a decent mower for a really decent price in what we do. And like I say, I can run 2, 3's nice. If we get a couple, Mother Nature decides to rain, I can throw 3 and still get it mowed in a week. That's, they say we're mowing 100 acres currently, plus the police department. So that's usually my big purchase. Besides, you guys allowed me to buy a new hoe last year. That's our other big machine we have to have for what we do.
Questions? Hal, you do a great job.
Thank you, thank you.
The cemetery always looks nice, and I know it's just season after season after season, but really do a good job.
And I can't do that, I've told, and in fact, there's hopefully something gonna come out, and Laska, since it's ain't free, I called her and asked her to do a little something on my employees. It hasn't come out yet. She came in, interviewed, and took some pictures. Big reason is, in all these years, we get a lot of compliments, and the business we're in is not really a complimentary business, but we do on how it's taken care of. And I always say, I will tell my guys, and I do, well, they're the backbone. I can't do it without them. I can't. They take ownership. Perfect example is my part-time. 2 of them have already left. It's Dan Gauss. Jim works more for me full-time, Jim Gauss. Dan has been with me 14 years. He's a school teacher.
Yeah.
And loves it. And his son is now his 2nd year landing with me. And it's goes to Spring Harbor. So my part-time takes ownership, my full-time does, and I can't do without them, and the place is. So they know that, and that's what I wanted to put a little something in about them so people know. And Denny has done a newsletter on all the part-time here, and in our newsletter too. So thank you, Denny, by the way. It's awesome.
All right, perm fund, 6605. Any final questions on the operations? All right, let's go to perm fund 6605.
As you're there, top two are pretty much the same. I plant trees every year. We put $5,000 worth in trees. We usually don't go to that max unless we lose more throughout the year. This year, we were fortunate not to lose as many, and we spent a little over 2,000. We planted another 14 trees. Got those in now. We just put them in last week with the weather. So trees there. Asphalting, which we talked a little bit about before. We've been, with Streets Help, has been re-asphalting and reconditioning some of the roads. And in the old section, I still have some short roads that need to be done. And that was obviously what we were going to do this year. And with Dustin's schedule, and I just went to him and said, hey, Bob, you got a ton on your plate. Let's not do it this year. So he was gracious enough. In the main road that comes up, our Cremation 2 had jetted out. We cut that out, redid that, so it's a wider road. And then what we call the rugged cross, we put block work around it. He came and patched that just this week. So I only had maybe $1,000 in asphalt. That's why I asked you to move the money over for me, so we can get this walkway in. So other than that, and different stuff is, you probably heard in the news, the water lines out there are in terrible shape. Last year, I think I spent over $3,000 in budget for water, to Indiana Water, because of leaks, not their fault. I mean, you have to wait till they bubble up, and so you have all that water expense. So 80% of the cemetery now has no water lines. We have jerked them out. They're not out there. The last two roads, second to last two roads have water. I've made a thing at the chapel. Everybody's getting used to it, bringing buckets. I don't have a lot of complaints. And then we use a ton of water, watering graves, flowers, different stuff. I just got finished last week, we just put in a well. I had Hydrotech put a well in the back, and we actually it's a flowing well. We hit water, hard water, good water at 82 feet. It's an 8-inch well. I have designed a trailer with a 300-gallon tank on it that we can use. I have one in the back of a truck, so it's sufficient for us now. We may go a little bigger. The problem is filling with Indiana Water. I mean, to put a hose in takes forever. Well, with this 8-inch well, we can do 40 gallons a minute. Now, this helps out a lot. Talked to Larry. I just talked to some of the guys at the street. The street has a well. Larry, you get it at the fire department, correct? Indiana Water's talking about charging, I think, or what I've been talking about. So this way now we have a well at each town. Park can come in and grab and get water. Street can come in and get water. They were talking to me today, haven't got through Dustin, is their street sweepers. Is putting a dumpster back at my shop so they can dump and refill water instead of driving all the way back to do that. So it's going to be a multi-function, I'm hoping. That was my plan. And it's basically electricity. No, we're not paying Indiana Water for this. So it's not water usage. So if you want some clean, it's very good water. I like well water. So anyway, when I put it in, it was for the cemetery, but it just involved, and it might as well be used for the city, whoever wants it. I just talked to Nick. He said they have trouble filling one of their machines. He said, hey, you may bring it over. I said, please, that's what it's there for. So anyway.
Whenever I hear things like this, I just wish this whole room were full of citizens that could hear how our departments cooperate together and work together and to get things done and make the most out of their money. Because there are not very many cities that do this, and I just, all you guys are just awesome the way you work together and help each other out. I am so impressed every year. You come up with new ways to help each other, and it's just
We do,
awesome.
and it is great. Be honest with you, this budget would be bigger. Larry lets me use his electrician when I have in-house, so a lot of it is labor. This Toolcat, perfect example. I wasn't expecting to have a 2-year machine, and I am going to have a talk with Bobcat, but to do bearings and stuff, it's $4,000. Why in 2 years? But that's material, that's not labor.
And this has been very purposeful to get to the point where you're exactly right. We've been having department head meetings where these common concerns come up. We're looking at ways with that organizational and operational view to centralize. This has been a concerted effort, and we've got great department heads. I mean, you're going to hear examples as we get through, but having that communication, having that organization so that we can share makes perfect sense, and you all are seeing the fruits of that.
And the thing with me, I like what Dustin and someone do, I can't replace. I mean, I'm not that big. But what we do, and that's why I purchased another truck, my 3/4 ton went down in the fleet. So now I have 2 3/4 tons, and I have a 1/2 ton. Once that cemetery's open, we go out and do city streets. We usually do alleys and stuff like that. So does other departments. We all do it. So that's why your roads get clean, because, perfect example, I was doing the one-ways and couldn't figure out why it was getting wider than what I was doing. Brian from wastewater was with me. We didn't know. We were flipping doing it, and all of a sudden, we've met up, and I said, "You doing the one-ways?" "Yeah, that's how it got cleaned off so quick." I'm like, "I'm not that good. I'm gonna do it." So, yeah, that's, so you guys know that. We do work together.
I want to add one more thing. You know, we can provide the budget, you know, we can provide the communication, but the most important thing is leadership. And Denny has done a yeoman's job getting the departments together. Larry will talk about it, I'm sure. Just getting everyone on the same page and understanding that working as a team, we're going to get things done. And, you know, that takes some work. So I give Denny a ton of credit for starting the leadership classes within the city. I think we're on our finish up our third class. So between that, again, communication with our technical review, with our budget, our department head meetings, and organizational operational review, tools are all there. And hopefully this budget will start to reflect some of that.
And the last thing on here, so you know, is the chapel, which is still all original. We're getting some gutters on next year. We're gonna put new carpet, some new tile, and stuff. Great. Thanks to Larry and redoing the park down here. I got his chairs from his other one, so I don't have a bunch of, they're in perfect shape. So other than that, I don't have but one suggestion. With Denny, Way of the Shepherd, first book. Get a copy from him. Great book. He drug this old man into that leadership thing, and the first one's pretty impressive.
You learned something.
Huh?
You even learned something.
I'm always open. I'm always open, and I hope to do what that book does, and I think I do, but it still opens you up to a lot of stuff. And I even in Oakwood, I have a lot of my guys want to go through it now too.
Yeah.
I have one of my employees, and then I'll send 2 more.
That's great.
Good. Any other questions on my perm? I don't want to sneak out here in case you had it. You know where I'm at if you need it.
Appreciate it, Hal.
All right, thank you.
Very good. All right. Larry, 2204, we'll start with the Park and Rec Fund.
All right, that's our operating budget. As you can see in the salary and wages, we did the 3% increase, 4% on the insurance, and other personal service, that's our cell phone reimbursement, so a 3% increase on total personal services there. We go to supplies, office supplies, we've held the line there. Operating supplies, we've added 10,000 to that, 7% increase, but 6,000 of that is the Castaldi fountain. It takes about $6,000 worth of salt to run that a year. With that being said, this first system we had failed us by filtering. It was rusted all the time. We brought some people in. They said a salt system would work, and it has worked. It's proved all year long that it's worked, as long as you keep salt in it. We found that at one time, but yeah. So, you know, there again, we got the downtown streetscapes, the flower beds, 80-some flower beds downtown. Of course, our recreation and aquatics operating supplies there. So like I said, it's a 7% increase for $10,000, and most of that is due to the Castaldi fountain and just supply cost in general. So, repair and maintenance supplies, here again, I mean, as everybody knows, you know, wood's going up, fiber's going up, wood fiber, just all the supplies, paint, lumber. We recondition over 400-some picnic tables every year. Costs have went up, so we've got about an 8% increase due to supply costs of $10,000 there for $128,000. Other supplies, $300. We always put that in there for snow removal meals, I should say. We haven't had to use that in past years, thank God. You know, we used to sleep on cots when we had blizzards and everything else, and we feed the guys every once in a while when they're out working. But so total supplies, $279,300. It is 8% increase of, or $20,000 increase due to higher supply costs. Any question on supplies? Okay. Other services and charges, professional services. This has jumped up a little bit here at the Center Lake Pavilion and our new park office. We have some monitoring services for the fire and the security alarms systems. We will have service agreements for the HVAC and water heaters, on-demand water heaters that have to be plunged every year, ran through, checked. So those will be some added cost there. Again, we have our lake associations. We support all 3 lake associations. We have the spraying of trees at McKinley, Central Park, and Kittyland. It's an ongoing thing. Legal fees, drug testing, geese removal. Every year we've removed geese from our lakes. When they molt, our crew rounds them up. We catch them. We remove them, and it's went from 300 birds a year down to around about 90 a year with our efforts. So, and the shoreline stabilization really helps that as well. In the past, I've been a stickler, we were always groomed right down to the edge of the water. Well, I've learned over time that that's really not the way it should be done. With the shoreline stabilization and all the plantings there, it needs to have that 8 to 10 foot buffer from the shoreline to keep that erosion. And it also helps with geese population. They're afraid to go through there because the predators are on the other side or in the weeds. So we have seen that help as well. So just something interesting, and we're gracious to have all our banks stabilized now through stormwater fees. So water testing, we have that at Kelly Park still. Ice strike lightning detection, we have those in 3 areas still. That was through a grant from the Kosciuszko Community Foundation years ago. We have our copier and maintenance in there. I did not put a copier in our budget this year, or for 2024. I plan to use, get the funds out of 2023 and use that, like Joe said. So you won't see a new copier in mine. So the total is $96,900. That's a 14% increase, or $11,600, but the increase is due to the new fire alarm monitoring system and the HVAC and water appliances agreement and fertilizer cost for Center Lake Park and the park office. So, any questions on that? Okay, we'll go to communication and transportation. Same as last year, 0% increase, $10,000. Of course, that's our postage, our Verizon jetpacks. Those run all of our camera systems that are in, we now have them in Nye, Rarick, Kelly, Richardson, Du Bois. Those are all Pete Thorne Center. Those are all systems or camera systems that are very low cost to run through the Verizon jetpacks. And then we have travel for the recreation. So no increase on that. Printing and advertising, again, we've held the line here. This is, we do a lot of advertising for our programs and events, and we've held that line. I think we're good on that. Insurance, we were instructed to put a 5% increase in there, so that's $51,000. Utilities, we've seen increased usage at our campgrounds. It's been full. We've got new meters out there. The NIPSCO rate also is increasing. And then we'd like to put some water meters at Rarick Park, and so that's about a 17% increase, or $24,000 there. Repair and maintenance, contracted expenses, pest control. We've got our agreement for the satellite beds at Central Park that we use every year. Contractual sound and stagehands for our 3 major concerts. The big one on here is the asphalting and sealing and striping of the Boggs basketball court. It's been about 20 years since we did anything out there. And I don't know if you've been out there, but the west court is in bad shape. We had a few years ago, about 5-6 years ago, when we had a lot of rain, we had a hydraulic situation where it blew up the court, and we just could not keep it fixed. And that has since went away. We've patched it, but we have all the Zimmer employees, all the industrial park employees. We have people play at night because we have lights there. It's just really, it was a great facility years ago when we did that, and we had leagues out there. And I would just like to bring that back up. It's used every day I go by there. It's being used at some time of the day. So $80,000 for that. The other thing I'd like to put in there that's is $30,000 for the fence replacement at Kelly Park courts. Those are the pickleball and tennis courts. The old fence that we left up on the south and the west side, been there a long time, but we just did the east side when we did the courts. Well, we put windscreen on those. Well, as soon as the windscreen's on there, the poles aren't deep enough. It just keeps pulling it out. Now, we've been out, we put them back in, we pull them out and put them back in. So I'd like to get new fencing in there with windbreak fence in it, so we don't have to put windbreak up there with wire ties and it blows off every storm. So that's what we'd like to do there. And then, of course, miscellaneous trucks repairs. So it's about a 26% increase, but that's due to the bogs and the Kelly Park repairs for a total of $2,200. Rentals, this is our uniforms, which our uniform costs went up a little bit with the new contract. Porta pots have actually, they went up. We had the same rate for about 7 years now. They have not charged us much anymore for those, but they are going up. This year we saw that the cost of those did go up for our 3 major concerts. We also have them at the skate park and at the BMX track too, year round. So that's about a 7% increase or $2,000 for that, for a total of $30,500. Other services and charges, here we've got landfill, professional membership dues, fireworks, of course, for the fireworks display at Wino Lake, employee training sessions. This is certified playground safety inspectors, 3B pesticides and ornamental continuing education. Excuse me. Then we have the Department of Homeland Security, that we have to get our annual permits for Glover, the Fireman's Building, all of our rental facilities. And then for the musicians and entertainment sound support, the Rock and Country and Blues Lake Fest, we put $90,000 in there. That's a $5,000 increase from last year, and that is for a total of $102,200 for this category. With that being said, $5,000 isn't a big increase for that. The acts we're getting now are kind of at the bottom of the barrel of what we can get. We're lucky if somebody's touring through the town and we can get them for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. It just all depends. The $5,000 will help us some. We've also looked at just doing the Rock and Country, not doing the blues concert, maybe replacing that with a local band concert night, doing something like that so we could offset some of the funds that we spend on the blues, which is a low budget event that we had, $15,000, $20,000, and putting that towards the Rock and the Country too, so that maybe we can get that next level artist sometime, or be in the, vie for that artist coming through town to have that extra $5,000 or $10,000 to get them. So that's our thinking there. Total other services and charges is $684,900. As I said, it's increased due to the alarm monitoring, the new park office in the pavilion, insurance, utilities, the repairs court at the Boggs Courts, and the entertainment costs. So about 15% or $87,100 there. Capital outlays, machinery and equipment, replacing in our 5-year master plan. It calls in our 10-year maintenance plan for a new truck and plow to replace a 2014 truck and plow. We've got bench replacement at Bixler Park. Our thinking there is that the benches over there are deteriorating, and as we do the recreational trail coming through Center Lake Park and through Municipal and through Bixler, we would like to make the benches in Bixler Park match that trail bench while we're doing that. Make it look sharp while we're doing it. So we've got $22,000 for that. Of course, our Bobcat upgrade that we do yearly. And then riding mowers, I heard Hal talk about it. We replace ours every 4 years. We have 4 of them. We rotate them out, so it's 1 a year, about $12,000 to do that. We also own those, Mike, we own ours as well, and then we trade them in, get a good trade-in value out of them. And then we've got skate park replacement ramps and equipment, $6,000. So we're down about 12% decrease in capital outlays. That's basically due that we're not doing any playground replacement this year. That's usually $50,000 or $60,000. So total capital outlay is $123,000. The total proposed budget is $2,964,700. That reflects a 3% increase above the 2023 approved budget after the line 1 cuts. So after the line 1 cuts were done, this is about 3% more than last year's budget. So Again, we tried to hold the line the best we could. Some of it we just can't help with supply cost and utilities, so, yeah.
Questions?
Any questions on that?
Larry, just for a quick minute, and I know it doesn't correlate directly with this budget, but as far as your program, or not your program fees, your rental fees, certainly that will be picking up as the pavilion is finished here in the next month or two, as well as the increase in fees that the Parks Board passed earlier this year. So I assume that some of this is going to be offset.
Yeah, I hope so. That's our hope. I mean, the pavilion has struggled, for 2 or 3 years now. With COVID, we didn't have many rentals, and then we allowed the testing down there. We didn't get any revenue from that. We're back, now we're under construction, so we've had multiple calls for the pavilion, but until we get that finished and the light switches are on, I don't want to rent it until that's done, because, I'd hate to ruin somebody's wedding or something and promise them it's done and it's not done, but we're looking, like Joe said, within a month and a half here of having that facility complete and ready to rent, so, absolutely.
All right. Diane, any comments
Well,
from
I'd
the
just say
Parks
that the
Board
Park Board
side?
reviewed it and, of course unanimously approved it, but we did take a good hard look at the fees, which was another thing that was in the financial plan. Suggested that all departments look at the fees for services. And so we did a lot of comparison with other towns, with other like facilities, with value for cost and that kind of thing. And also then just what it really does cost us. And I was talking with somebody today, it's not just the building. When you get it, you have to maintain it. And if you don't maintain it to the standards, then pretty soon you have problems. And so Sean's excellent at, and Larry is at anticipating what things will cost. And so we're trying to keep things running at top level at all times. And, so it takes some expenditure and some planning. But our 5-year master plan has been a wonderful guide, and we really do stick to it as we go through, so, yeah.
And I can elaborate a little bit on what Joe was talking about Denny and his leadership class. Our department has taken that to heart. We had the Global Leadership Summit. We chose to do it online so I could involve all my department, not just 3 or 4 people to go to the summit. It was amazing. I mean, they took to it. We actually watched another one today for some of the people that didn't get to watch a couple speakers. It starts at the top, it goes to the bottom, but it's all got to work together. And my department has bought into that. And I think that's very important. And I thank Denny for, giving us that opportunity. But big steps, I've been here a long time, and I think things are going as good as they could be for a long time. So as far as employment, employees being happy, buying into the team concept, not being afraid to voice their opinion, knowing that I'm going to talk to them, we're all going to sit down and talk, we're going to get the best solution for our team and move forward. So, it's good communication and good support. I appreciate that, Danny.
Another fun thing too is just we've talked about ways that we can, incentivize employees without, spending a lot more money. And so Larry's instituted a program where they vote on their employees.
We have a team member of the month.
Team
I don't
member
know
of
if
the
you've seen
month.
it in the paper, but we did that, and it's not voted by me. It's voted by all their peers. First of every month, I take a slip out there, and I say, okay, it's your vote. They not only vote, but they tell me why they're nominating this person. So we've had a different person every month, believe it or not, but we've had some that are really close to repeating, but there could be as many as 10 employees sometime when we vote for a month. So I think that's pretty special, that somebody's really thinking about, hey, this guy went the extra mile, or this guy helped these seasonal helpers, try to get something done, and it's just neat. It's just neat, and they're buying into it, so.
And then we
Yeah.
mention them at the park board,
Yeah.
but they just get so excited.
Yeah.
And it's great because it's a team building thing more than a competition. It's almost a way of like encouraging and saying thank you to people that are making the job better. He set it up that way rather than a competition. It's really been neat to watch.
Okay, any questions, any more on that 2204? Okay, we can go to the 2211. This is our non-reverting recreation budget. This budget is, our program fees are put into this budget. We were proposing no increases for this. We did get some ARPA funds that helped us this year, and we have a little bit left for next year. So we feel that we have adequate enough amount of funds to do what we need to do. We are adding some more programs next year. Stephanie and I were just talking about that today. So, you know, we always like to expand on our programs and meet the public's demands of what they want to see and what they want to have done. And she does a great job. We've had a tremendous year on programming and recreation. So currently there's, well, about 3 months ago when I asked Kelly, there was $45,000 in this fund, and we're asking to budget $23,350 again for next year. So, and that will go up as we get fees from programs. So.
Questions? All right.
And then our last one is the 4403. This is a non-reverting budget, non-reverting fund for the Nye Youth Cabin, the Fireman's Building, and the kayak and paddleboard kiosks. That all goes into this fund. So there again, we're looking at some window and blind replacement and guttering at the Nye Cabin and the Fireman's Building. Then we're looking at costs related to the replacement of the kayak lockers, $5,000 in case we have a damaged kayak or need new life jackets, paddles, anything of that sort. And then we're looking at appliances or water heaters, tables and chairs for both those facilities. Total of $45,000. We currently have $111,036.66 in that fund 2 months ago when I talked to you.
It's like 98,000 right now at the end of July.
What's that?
It's 98,000.
Is it? Okay.
But I do want to add that the rentals have really skyrocketed the revenue when I was figuring out the revenue last week. I really noticed that, so.
And we just got a revenue check from the kayak kiosks that we're going to be turning into you too. So they've been a big hit. They've been a really big hit at Pike Lake, about 2-to-1 to Center, but I think that's because of some of the construction and there aren't restrooms available down there right now. That's had an impact a little bit on the rentals down there. So we're hoping once that pavilion's all done, we do have paddle boards and kayaks down there now, so we hope that don't just boom that right back up and go. So.
Questions? Larry, again, I want to thank you for all you've done, and again, your employees are certainly what makes the Parks Department run, and your leadership, again, everything really seems to be clicking, and talked to the guys the other day, and the guys have had a big year with the new parks building and the pavilion getting ready to go, and a great country concert, so just appreciate what you've done with your leadership and your guys. And
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. Appreciate
All right.
it.
Thanks, Larry.
All right. Denny, you're a veteran at budgets this year.
Yes, sir,
It's
yeah.
your second year.
Second year, so I'm starting to understand it a little bit more now.
Let's let you go. This
Okay.
is number 3.
003.
Thanks, Larry.
So overall, my budget is very similar to last year's. You'll see that it is going to increase by about $75,000. That is because we have decided to, right now we have a part-time custodian here at City Hall. That's going to become a full-time position. So with that adds in insurance and perf and all the other fringes. So that's why you will see a big increase in my personal services budget.
I just want to say kudos on getting your administrative assistant, and like the newsletters are great, and it's just great to have somebody always there and available if you
Yes.
pop in, and I think this has been a great addition.
We've done a really good job of not hiring quickly, but taking our time to find the right people, and we definitely found the right one there. She's doing a great job. So. But I won't tell her that out loud, so don't put that in the paper, Dave. On supplies, I had 3 line items in the supplies, and I dropped each one of those by $1,000. Those were line 1 cuts last year, so I just decided to keep them down because they're right where they need to be with office operating and maintenance supplies.
I just wanted to, on behalf of Denny, talk a little bit about this maintenance position. This is more of a maintenance position than a janitor position.
Yes.
Obviously, we still need to have janitorial work done, but, you know, this building is subject to maintenance issues almost on a constant basis. You all see a pretty significant budget in the council budget for repairs and maintenance, building repairs, and it's typically this building here. Having someone to be able to stay on top of that could potentially save us. And we have needed this for a long time, and it's time to pull the trigger. Absolutely have to have someone that doesn't just clean, but someone that understands the importance of maintenance and can maybe head off problems, maybe do some minor maintenance repair without having to engage a vendor. So we've talked a lot about this. And again, we'll be sharing that maintenance person potentially with others as they need it. But for now, that individual is contemplated for next year for this building here.
And it's nothing against Fred, because Fred does an excellent job of what we ask him to do. But we've noticed that with the bigger things that need attention, it takes up a lot of the mayor's assistant's time. You know, Stacy and Whitney are spending a lot of time with contractors and trying to find people to come in and do things that need to be done. So this person will be doing that work and taking that load off of the mayor's office as well. So.
Example was last year when we had the sewer backup in the basement, and we had a very tedious time working with our insurance adjuster to finally get that done. And Denny's exactly right. It took a lot of time from my staff. But again, more importantly, is that something that could have been prevented? I don't know, but we're going to do everything we can to try and minimize those excuse me, those repair costs. So, all right.
Okay, other services and charges. Professional services, we kept the same. Communications and transportation, we kept the same. Printing and advertising, we lowered by $1,000. I don't need to do a whole lot of printing and advertising. The only advertising that we do in HR is for job positions, and that's mostly on our website and Indeed, which are not charged for, so. Repairs and maintenance, that was a line that we had in the budget to help with this building, but it also came out of the council budget, so we kind of had 2 different pots for the same thing. So we're gonna take it out of the HR budget and put it all back into the council budget. Uniforms and mats, the rentals, we increased that by $1,500. We were doing, wastewater was splitting half and half with HR on this building's rentals for the uniforms for the janitorial, and then also the mats and things for inside. Instead of trying to go back and forth with that, I decided to put it in my budget and let me take care of it. That way it's one person doing one thing and getting it done. It doesn't convolute anything else. So that's why it went up $1,500. And then the other services and charges, I asked for a $10,000 increase in that. That is mainly for employee recognition. we do a great job of telling our employees how much we appreciate them, but we really don't recognize them publicly and things like that. So this is going to help me install a program to where you guys will be seeing a lot more of the employee appreciation, employee recognition type things. I think we've got a lot of good plans coming out, and I hope everybody will be happy to see that when they come. But our teams are doing phenomenal jobs. Our turnover rate has just dropped to the basement. So everybody we have wants to be here. They're happy to be here, and it's been good to not have to worry about filling positions because we're not losing people. So
And just a side note, had a pretty good discussion with Denny and our mayor-elect today about the importance of this and how we're going to probably try and set it up a little bit differently in the future as far as the funding. We want to be careful with the State Board of Accounts that we don't spend differently than we should, let's put it that way. And utilizing the mayor's PR fund is probably how I would suggest moving in the future. That is obviously will not be my call. But the important thing is that we've started this program. And you can see, I think you got a great idea what this leadership program has done to the morale, to the efficiency. It's just, it's been great. And part of that is that recognition. So all good, totally on board with that. I think new mayor-elect is totally on board with that as well. But we do have to make sure that we're spending that money the way the state allows us to spend that money. So, all right.
So overall, the budget, my budget change that I'm requesting is an addition of $74,785 over last year's budget. So that brings my total to $334,907 for the total budget.
Questions?
I think the only question I had was on the janitorial maintenance, and I think you answered that perfectly.
Thank you.
Danny, your salary is split 3 ways or 2 ways?
3 ways.
So were you going to do that with the janitor maintenance, at least 2 ways between wastewater and city?
I planned on keeping it the same as it is right now.
And same with the administrative assistant, that's
Correct.
100%
Yes.
general fund, okay.
We work for the entire city, so she come out of that general fund.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Denny. Chief Mayo, I don't know how you drew the short straw. I'm going to step aside and let you come up and present before I do, because you've been so patient. So why don't you come on up and what the heck?
You can't leave anyway then, so.
I just might die before then.
I was gonna say, I feel bad because it wasn't just you, it was the clerk's budget, I
Yeah.
think, was in there as
Well,
well.
I've never thought of, so don't worry about it, Brian.
Well, these are some whoppers, because you know the fire territory is one of the larger departments in the city, so we have one of the larger budgets. Obviously, we do not come out of the general fund, so we come out of the territory levies and such. We have 4 different budgets, and I'll start with 2243 if everybody wants to take a look at that. Really, I'm just going to, you have the explanation pages, which I think are a little bit easier to read from than the Form 1, that kind of denotes the increases or the decreases. We're roughly at about 3.559,100 for salaries and wages. You'll see a 5.3 increase versus the standard 3. Like we just mentioned, HR and clerk, portions of their salaries and wages come out of ours, as well as when you take into effect, we have some anomalies in the territory such as CARES, and our CARES coordinator at the moment, the ARPA grant money picks that up except for the benefits part of that wage. So some of that stuff is factored in there.
Is that the same with the opioid settlement? and the-
So, no, and that's why I said,
Okay.
our budget is such an anomaly. The new grant positions that are gonna be coming up, which is the ARC Corp and the opioid, those are 100% out of their grants. So all their pay, all their benefits, vehicles, uniforms, everything come out of those grants.
Oh, okay.
That's why they're such a blessing. Now, the flip side, and I know Lynn will weigh in on this if she wants to, but those are 100% reimbursable grants, so they're a little bit more sticky as far
We
as
need
the.
to talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah, they're a little stickier as far as how that process will unfold, but that's nothing to the taxpayers. So that's a real bonus. When we go into employee benefits, you'll see an 18% increase there. A lot of that, again, is the picking up of the CARES person. The 77 fund, the 200,000 with some change gets put back into our fund this year. Then, of course, some additional civilian perf positions there as well. Personnel services, we were able to toe the line, 0 increase there, so roughly a 9.06% increase in just personal services.
Chief, I might point out that the pension, if you remember last year, we were able to utilize some of the pension fund money to pay the pension, and we've exhausted that resource, if you will. So the full pension payment is back on the department budget, and it jumped from 284 to 530. It's a pretty significant number.
Right, and that's just one of those things where that's why that 18% increase jumps in there, it kind of jumps out at you. And I should have started off the presentation and said that this year we're essentially 0 line budgeted for this year, whereas opposed to years past, we were a little over budgeted. I shouldn't say 0. We're $2,000 over projected levy revenue. So that's, to me, a huge accomplishment for the fire department. I think you're going to see where some of that was picked up and moved around to do that. So personnel services, again, just about 9% increase for a total of $5,295,633. Supplies, off supplies, no change. Operating supplies, we went up a little bit for fuel. That's pretty self-explanatory. Repair and maintenance, this is one of those line items where you saw a 5% decrease. Going through and looking at some of the, what I would call the personality of these funds, they're better placed into the equipment replacement fund, which we'll get to in a minute because we can consolidate some services and some maintenance. We also do utilize some of the shops here in the city, so we take some full advantage of that, which again, great teamwork on the city's part, but there's a decrease in 5% on that one. Next page over, you'll see other supplies, 32% increase, and that sounds massive, but really it's only a $3,000 increase in our public education. Our demand for services and what we do in the schools and the community just keeps going up and up and up, so we added $3,000 in there. Other services and charges down below, you'll see professional services, we went down 11%. We've had 2 scheduled retirements, and those are going to be due to just 2 regular replacements next year, so the physicals won't be quite as much money. Communication transportation, 17% on the high side, and you'll see really it's just the training component. We went from 25,000 to 30,000. Again, the training and the fire service is just, I can't describe the pace at which what we need to keep up with. And one great example is the EVs that are on the road, the electronical vehicles that we have to contend with. The technology that is just, the curve is unreal. So $5,000 up in the training budget is really a drop in the bucket for that. Printing, advertising, no change. Insurance, we went down 3%. Again, that was described, I think Lynn went into that, this is workers' comp and our umbrella liability stuff. So workman's comp went down a smidge. Our limited liability umbrella for the vehicles. That's just the coverage for the new vehicles, and it does talk about the new rescue pumper there. We actually will save a little bit of that because I was just informed the new engine, while it's obviously not here this year, probably will be late of 2024 due to, I hate to use the C word, but the COVID word and all the delays that that's causing. So we actually won't pay insurance on something we don't have until it arrives. So we'll probably have a little bit of savings there. Utilities, 5% increase, pretty self-explanatory. Repairs and maintenance, again, that stuff's better suited into the equipment replacement fund, and we're able to consolidate some of our services, which is really helpful. Rentals, no change. Debt service, no change. Other services and charges, about a 5% increase, and again, that sounds like a lot, it's $500 under subscriptions and memberships. Again, the more and more the fire department absorbs, and CARES is a good reflection of that, the more and more memberships and dues and subscriptions that we belong to, so just a $500 increase there. Capital outlays, again, 63% decrease, that sounds amazing. Again, we just took what should have been in the equipment replacement fund and put it in the equipment replacement fund. And by doing that, that frees up our ability to pay salaries and wages and be able to stay on track with our budget there. And so the grand total down there at the bottom is $5,779,363 for roughly a 6.84% increase. Questions?
So obviously, this is Chief Mayo's first budget, but it's obvious as well that he's got a lot of experience with budgets, and very appreciative. We spent a lot of time talking about my expectations, and we sat down and he presented a budget that pretty much meets the revenue that'll be coming in. And I'll say that that's a very good thing. So questions on this first budget? All right.
Okay. We'll flip over to 4410, which is the equipment replacement fund. Again, special note, the new engine that would have been coming out this year has actually been pushed into next year's budget. And again, this is the quirky thing about waiting on an arrival for a truck we're at the whim of the manufacturers. I'm hoping it's the last quarter of 2024, but I haven't been able to get a delivery date from them. Not to go into great detail, but the motor that we have picked in there, and we're not alone by this, there's a lot of departments across the country that use this motor. There's a very large entity, let's just call it the DOD, that went out and purchased 15,000 of these overnight. Well, that set back everybody else from getting those orders filled. So our truck is kind of sitting until they figure out how to get that process back and moving. So again, I've been told by our dealer rep, late 2024, I'm going to go on a whim and say I wouldn't be shocked if it was more like 2025. So the equipment replacement fund reflects the engine being in there. However, I could very easily see that getting pushed. Again, the explanation page is probably the best. Repairs and maintenance for buildings. We came in pretty good this year and did some good updates on Station 1, Station 2, keeping around $150,000. So I don't think we'll use 200 this year. We didn't use 200 this year. We'll probably wind up using about 175 going into next year. So that went down about 12%. Debt service, the new aerial, and I use this term lightly too because we're still in the specking process to rebuild I shouldn't say rebuild, replace the ladder truck because it's 20 years old. That process will take every bit of a year to get the specs out. Going through the financing piece and talking to some of the people who do stuff and the other entity in the state, I can't remember their name, that does the bonding and the financing and stuff.
Indiana Bond Bank?
Thank you. Indiana Bond Bank. A lot of them would like us to start paying on the debt service a little earlier because you didn't used to pay until it arrived. Well, now that it's taking 2 to 3 years to build something, they'd kind of like a little money up front because they're not going to get anything. So we added in $200,000 a year starting next year to start paying on the aerial before it arrives. So that's why that looks like a big chunk of change right there. Improvements other than building the training grounds, $50,000 for last year. We've been able to, and you can thank Chief Bollinger for this because he's gone out there and really watched that thing day and night. And also we were able to use the services within the city and save a lot of money. So we did actually some extra repairs that we will use that $50,000, so we did not budget any training ground improvements for next year. Machinery and equipment, you're going to see about a 10% increase. Again, just replacing dive equipment, TRT. There's the engine that got pushed over. And then the $75,000, again, equipment tech replacement upgrades. I use that as a broad category for anything. Thermal imaging cameras might be a good example, and I know we just got a grant for small ones, so that's a bad example, but hydraulic tools. If we have a hydraulic tool that just gets destroyed, yeah, we have insurance replacement, but it doesn't cover it like brand-new upgraded ones. So there's a $75,000 there, and we are replacing one administrative vehicle next year. Dropping down to other capital outlays, a blanket $200,000, and underneath there, all those carry over. PPE, meaning our turnout gear, that cost, I can't even describe to you how fast it goes up. It seems like it's overnight. There's a new percentage increase every night. So all those costs have incrementally gone up from year to year. The grand total for next year should be $1,661,268, or roughly 19.19% increase. Question on equipment replacement fund.
Do you have any kind of a contract or anything in place yet for the pumper that's to be delivered in 2024 that's in our budget this year?
There is a contract.
Do you already have that money PO'd then?
It was PO'd for this year. That PO was canceled. We, generated a new PO for next year.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're trying to keep up on the administrative side of that truck, but it is literally just rolling from year to year to year at this point. Anything on equipment replacement? Okay. The next one is the pension fund, which Shirley and I love to go back and forth on this because I believe the technical term would be the 1937 fund, whereas everybody currently is on the 77 fund. These are really just retirees that were under an older, different pension system. Excuse me, and it really is set from year to year. The cost you can see on the back page of the explanation of what they get paid out on a yearly basis, and then their surviving spouses along with that. Really cut and dry, actually. Any questions on the 37 fund?
And then the state basically reimburses us back for what we pay out.
Okay. And the last one is the hazmat fund. Really, again, this one's pretty cut and dry. We try to keep it to around, I think it's $1,200 for the year. Yeah, and it was the same as last year.
What's the number on that, Chief?
The hazmat fund?
2238.
Yes, thank you. And it really, all that does is replace our expendables that we use on the scene for like kitty litter, oil dry, pads, booms. Sometimes we can charge a spiller and recoup those costs, but sometimes we can't. So it's just a loss. And again, that's the same as it was last year, it's $1,200. Questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Chief, while you've got the group and talking about looking into the future, can you give us a high-level look at, we've had some discussions about Station 2, without going into too much detail, just basically some of the concerns, and we don't have solutions yet, but obviously I think I want the council to be aware of what could be coming in the next couple of years.
Absolutely. Station 2 is 50 years old. It has been refurbished, rehabbed, and redone over the years. It is definitely what I would call it its end-of-life cycle. We can't go up because the footers are too old the way they were designed. It was designed for one story. So we don't even really have the capability of adding out or up because of the old design features. I hate to mention this out loud, there's leaks daily in that station due to HVAC and condensation. And so the crews have done a phenomenal job of what I would call band-aiding that building over the years. It really wasn't designed to do what it's doing, which is administrative offices, crews, training, as much as sleeping and administrative work. The rough sketch, I will just say that, and the guys have done this before I ever got here, so they've got a great plan in their head, and they've put it on paper through one of our local design firms, is really, and I'm really making this a short, condensed version, keeping the bays that are there because they are solid and they are built, and we can rehab the interior of the bays, and then essentially destroying the old living quarters and admin side that you see currently, and building off both sides of the bay on the east and west sides. Parking will be a real challenge because the footprint there is so limited, but I have discussed with the mayor, I've discussed with other people in the city, I've gone out and driven around and trying to find any other properties in the city I think that would give us the good response location, which that is a prime response location. and as well as cost, because it's very cost prohibitive to go buy land and go build on it, and we already own the land. So really building it there and going up with the right footers and the right building is the plan. How that looks and the financing is all in a discussion phase. I know Baker Tilly's desperately working on that, so we're exploring options. So it's due, it's time, the plan's rolling around. What it's going to look like, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's really where we're at right now. Nothing definite, other than the concern that something needs to be done. But there are no plans other than some high-level drawings, if you will. It's really good to know that those bays will continue to function, and as Chief mentioned, that location for response out onto 30 and back into town is just, you can't get any better. So I'd like to think the future of Station 2 will be where it's at now, but probably in a few years, it's gonna look a little different. So just a little update, something to consider. But nothing in the budget for that, other than a few Band-Aids next year.
So some maintenance upgrades, that's
Yeah.
about it. Any questions? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Great. All right, Lynn, you can be next if you want.
You wanna go, you can go, I don't care. Waited this long. So my budget's, number 4, first tab is number 4. And for, the wages and, all personal services, that went up about 6.3%, 7%. It's due to a little bit more for one employee on a different health insurance plan, and plus a higher than a 3% increase for a couple employees as well. Everything else pretty much stayed the same, so I did stay the same. So my total budget increase is just a little under, or a little over 4.5%. And Danny will talk about those salary increases when he does his salary ordinances.
And that's an example of some of the discussions we've been having, looking at the wage profiles, both for public municipalities, similar-sized communities, and looking outside in external environment here in the community. So, questions of Lynn? All right.
So the next tab would be 3307, which is the general obligation bond of 2016, which was used to build Fire Station 1. And it is what it is. I mean, we have to make our payments and have a little reserve in there. So the total budget for that is $259,200, and that also includes like a yearly fee we have to pay to the bank that holds the funds, or public funds, and that's $500 to Huntington Bank, who is our bank of choice for bonding.
So we're close to halfway through. You guys all remember when we did this, so
I just saw that.
that's, we're getting there.
And we get a little bit of revenue every year from Wayne Township for their portion of the bond. And then, if you remember in Brian's budget, he had bond payments of $9,000, bond payment or debt service of $9,000, and that's from the ambulance rental at that station, because that money's supposed to go towards debt service, but we really don't, hopefully we won't need to use that. And then the next one is our new bond for the park, and that is 3312 is the fund number, tab number. And so since this is our first year paying on it, our total obligation for 2024 is going to be $341,507. It was really hard to figure out what the revenue would be for this bond since it's new and we don't know so many things. So we'll get a little bit of money from like fit taxes and subbit taxes and alcohol excise taxes. But the big thing is that we don't know what the property tax effect is going to be on this, because it's new, we've never done it. And so so what I figured out is just is what our payments are going to be plus the annual fee to Huntington Bank. So when we go to do the forms in Gateway will probably add a 15% reserve to this because we can go up to 15%. And then I'm sure the DLGF will whittle stuff down when they get the stuff and we're trying to adjust all our rates.
So we looked at the tax impact of this before we did this bond for the parks. And if you recall, this is, I believe, an 8-year bond. My recollection is that it's going to add somewhere north of 3 cents to the tax rate. And again, we knew that impact before we decided to exercise this. If you remember right, we paid a significant portion of that building down with edit funds and other park funds, and we ham and egged it for a pretty good amount. But this remaining 2.1 principal is what we'll be paying back for the next 8 years. So add that to my comments at the beginning, that increasing that rate will certainly be a part of the result of this bond. And if I remember right, is around 3 cents. I don't believe it was more than that. I'm pretty sure that was about it. But Lynn's right, all the dust has to settle before the exact amount is known. But I think when the Baker Tilly looked at that, I asked them to look at, try and figure in the fees and what it would average out at, and that was roughly it.
So then the last budget I prepare is cumulative capital improvement, and that's 4401. In pre is exactly the same for 2024 as it was for 2025. And the total amount is $70,000, and $5,000 of that is in professional services, and then the rest of it is in capital outlays for bike walk path. But it's basically to be used for whatever. I mean, it could deviate from the bike walk path and do something else. We have about $180,000 in that fund right now. We're bringing about, the last couple of years, it hasn't been as much as previous years, but about $30,000 a year from the state, because it's all cigarette tax money.
Questions? All right, thank you, Lynn. We've been going a little over 2 hours. Anybody want to take a quick break, or you want to just plow through? All right, let's keep it going. Got it. Got to get the kids to bed, Josh.
Get myself to bed.
All right, well, I've got a bunch of budgets here, so we'll keep it rolling. We'll start with the mayor's budget, go to the mayor's explanation. See, one thing I want you to notice is some people put 24 first and 23 second. Some people do it the other way. Just be aware that on my explanation sheet, that first column is the 24, is the current budget, and the 23 is on the right. So salaries increase to 3%, and then increase the medical insurance by 4% overall. Going down through the rest of that budget, there's really not any real significant change in the mayor's budget. So it's actually, from last year's, what was recorded, it's actually showing a 2% decrease. But again, a lot of that has to do with not beefing up that medical insurance budget. So not much change there. Questions? All right. The next one we're going to go through is the council budget. This is number 5. And again, I go back to the budget explanation. I'll go down through here. I've got several. I got another sheet that talks about council budgeting on contracts. We'll get into that, but let's start with personal services. Again, we're at 3% increase with the 4% overall Well, you'll notice that common council wages and benefits are split, half for this budget and half with utility. Supplies are actually down a teeny bit. I eliminated the miscellaneous category, $500. So there's no miscellaneous other supplies. And other services and charges, what I'd like you to do is turn to the last page, and it's kind of a horizontal landscape page, so you have to turn your book sideways. Want to go down and just kind of explain how we figured this year. You know, we're looking at council contracts as being very specific to services that couldn't otherwise be provided by the city. And we talked about that, and we basically set those categories as public transportation, animal control, environmental protection, lakes and streams, assistance for victims of domestic violence, and administration and support of affordable housing rental assistance. So what I did was just took the amounts that were spent in the past on those organizations and just penciled them into 2024. The other thing, though, I did was you'll see we bumped the animal control services up significantly. And we've had a discussion with Animal Welfare League, and we're gonna talk specifically about those services. I think in September, Cindy's gonna walk us through all of these requests that she's got on these specific services. But I wanted to get that number in the budget, and that's going to give you a little preview as to where we may be heading that way. So, but that it's in the budget. It can always be cut down, but I can't raise it. So I snuck that in last minute. You'll notice that's $70,000. And no secret, if you look down the bottom, those are the contracts we paid last year, and we paid AWL $35,000. So it's a pretty significant increase. But again, I want to hold off on that discussion until we can get representatives from AWL and Cindy to go through all of these. So again, I think at the end of the day, you'll see down at the bottom, we were able to reduce those council contracts by about $21,000. Now, there's a couple other things that were put in that I want to draw your attention to. The Hyatt Palma study has suggested that Main Street hire a coordinator to implement the next group of Hyatt Palma recommendations. This is just a placeholder at this point. I'm actually meeting with the Hyatt Palma group this Thursday, and we're going to talk about that. But I've had preliminary discussions with Main Street, and we feel that someone's got to dedicate themselves to our downtown, to all of these initiatives that the Hyatt Palma recommends. So I have put that money in there. That was not in there last year. You'll notice I also bumped the facade grant from $25,000 to $50,000. That was a recommendation of the Hyatt Palma. We've been offering $5,000 grants since 2001, and you might get one or two windows with $5,000. So the idea was Hyatt Palma recommended that we at least double that. And in the future, you know, this would really only provide for 5 grantees at $10,000. And in the future, we could look at raising that even more. But with these additions, I think this really underscores that the money you all are spending or appropriating as council contracts are going towards services that we need, services we can't provide, services that we need that directly impact the city. And this has given us a chance to make those adjustments. And also, the services that we have to provide, we now have some flexibility to be able to provide more funding for some of these services that their costs are just skyrocketing as well. So the other thing I want to point out, there was about a $10,000 increase in the IT contracts. I would say that our IT budget, and I've got a copy here, Stacy, and the IT group has provided a spreadsheet that talks about the different components of that. But in 310, let's see, the amount was $160,000. Not 310, 320. So I have this, if you all want to look at that, and you'll see through the council budget, there's a few more areas where IT has all been centralized. And those budgets, we did that last year. This really isn't any difference, other than it's probably about a $10,000 increase for the IT contracts that we have. So again, at the end of the day, all the council contracts add up to $705,000 as I have presented them, which is about $21,000 less than what it was last year. So if you go back over to the 300s in your budget, which is other services and charges, you'll see 310, the amount of $705,600. And that comes directly from that sheet, from that back sheet that we just looked at. So any adjustments that are made there will be specifically reflected on 310 in professional services. The other component there is the mayor's PR fund. That stayed the same at $24,000. And again, just a little bit for the future. That is the fund that I think the employee recognition and other things that benefit the city from a promotional standpoint need to come out of. The mayor's PR fund was created by state statute. It requires that the mayor approve all the elements that are going in and out of there, which then allows those funds to be spent on things that it normally wouldn't allow to be spent in the budget. Again, I had a discussion with the mayor-elect. I also had a discussion with Denny, and for the time being, this is set up. Some of that promotional money will come out of the mayor's PR fund, but at some point, that could go back into the mayor's budget, and I would certainly see this budget increasing in the future for that reason. But for now, it's still at $24,000, the same as it was last year. Does that make sense?
But you think it's enough money to do the things you want to do?
Well, yeah, I do. I don't spend that money. The majority of those funds go to our Christmas party and our picnic that we have for our employees. You know, I don't spend a lot of money out of there. If a client would come into the community looking at the community for promotional reasons, I could take them out for lunch. I do very little of that. I mean, I just don't spend that money for, there are other things that can come out of there. Flowers and so forth for funerals and that kind of thing. But we're gonna figure out the right way. The mayor-elect's gonna figure out the right way to get that done. So, but we've had a good discussion, and
It was good today.
Yeah, can I show you the state statute on that, and like, there's only certain things. that can-
that's what we used. Yep.
And not that our promotional fund doesn't need to be updated, because it was put in the 80s, but that was,
We actually looked at the ordinance, and it's pretty tight. I mean, I think they did a good job. There may be some amending to that, but I think it would be minimal.
Mayor,
Yes?
I have a question. I've long thought, and I think several of us up here have long thought that we've needed a Main Street coordinator or manager for a long time. So I don't know if you could maybe drill down a little bit on the Main Street coordinator part of this. Is that 30,000 a partial payment to create that position? In other words, is that the total that person is going to be paid, or would we be getting money from, like the chamber or another organization that will?
It's all to be determined. We don't know if that would be a full-time position
Okay.
or a part-time position. I offered to put money in just to get the conversation started.
Good, yeah.
There aren't many details available other than Hyatt Palma said we need a downtown coordinator. And I felt that we needed to step up. So that's why I put that in there. And it could have been more, but I wanted to be first at the table saying we're in.
Yeah.
But not knowing, and again, trying to be sensitive to this budget, not knowing whether it's going to be a full or part-time person, the type of individual will be, I'm sure it's going to be, if it's full-time, it's going to be more, way more than that. But it could be part-time. So this is a start.
And that won't be our employee.
No, this is a
So I think
contract.
That's important to say, yeah.
Yeah, this is
That
a
will-
contract
Going to
with-
the chamber that will
with
manage
the chamber.
that.
That's why it was put on that way.
Okay. Very good. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Hyatt Palma has already paid dividends with things that people have done without even bringing this thing and discussing it. And this is really one of them. The buzz started right away that we need to consider this.
Oh, yeah. And
And I think we have had to have that. Now, this is not going to be an event coordinator. The event coordinator is still going to be a different role. This is someone that's charged with the initiatives that are listed in here for the downtown.
promotion and marketing of the city.
All the above.
Helping to fill some of the empty buildings and stuff that we have.
Keeping this on
Economic
track.
development.
I think it's really an
Keeping this
important.
on track.
It's somebody that wakes up at night thinking about these things because when they wake up in the morning, that's their job.
Yeah.
So I think everybody I talked to felt it was important.
It's time.
And you're all supportive of it, it's in the budget, so you all now need to talk about it and decide how important this is. But it's in. I wanted to get that in, so. All right. So again, the contracts went down a little, PR stayed the same. Communication and transportation, we went up about $8,000 in phone charges. Yeah, 320, let's see.
So what Denny was talking about is reflected in the 360, where we've got $50,000 now in the repair and maintenance fund.
Well, I put 130,000 in there. Last year, we had 145. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, we had 80,000 last year, and you have 130 in,
Well, we had another 65 for the roof. Last year was a combination of 180 and 65, and this year it's 130 for just not knowing what's next.
okay.
And that's for the actual contracted services to repair whatever
To
needs to be
do whatever
repaired.
needs done,
Yep.
okay.
Got just a little ahead of me. We centralized all our licensing for IT. And again, that's so all the licenses across the board are all paid centrally. And again, we did this last year. It's up about $10,000 from last year, so 320. 320 is up about 10,000 for centralized licensing and about 8,000 for phones and fiber. Let's see, 79, yeah. Okay. Everything else looks the same. Again, in 360, we've actually reduced by 15,000. Repair and maintenance costs on City Hall. Rentals stayed the same. I eliminated bank charges, and we do not have a municipal election next year, so we took 32,000 out of the 2024 budget there. So that saved us. So you can see other services and charges were about, I don't know, $50,000 less than we were last year. So also in network equipment and backup server, we took care of the backup server this year. 23, you'll see there was $63,700 for that. It's been ordered. So IT the IT group has done a good job keeping those hardware costs down. The server, we have the server, and the hub and all of our wiring, so we've got about 20,000 for network equipment as it comes up. So you'll see our capital outlays are down in your council budget by about $43,000. And as a result, this budget is down 4.5%, from 2.284 down to 2.180, 720. So pretty big change,
Down how much for?
4.5%.
Good job.
And I've got details on all the IT charges, if any of you want them, and I'm sure you might. Actually, Stacy has these copies. She can send that out to you. But it details professional services, the hardware, supplies, centralized licensing, and then our technology and communications.
Yeah, she would send that out.
I'd like to see it,
Yeah.
or get a hard copy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That way I can just stick it in here.
That's a good idea. I will have her do that.
Okay.
But again, that budget was actually down. The total IT budget was down $21,000 from last year. So again, as part of that organizational review, we've spent a long time getting to the point where we're at. Again, during our department head meetings, we have significant discussion on cybersecurity and the importance of staying ahead of those things, and our group is on it significantly, just doing a great job. So, questions on the council budget? I know I spent some time with Jack and we went through all this. I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to you about it. I'd love for you to come in if you've got questions or you want to dive deeper into this. Be happy to do that. But it's kind of good being able to knock that budget down a bit. All right,
Next.
next, let's see what we got here, Lynn.
Your edit?
Edit 2209. And I would just ask you to go back to the explanation sheet. Got a slight increase, 3% for salaries and wages. We pay a quarter of the Community Economic Development Director's salary and a third of his admin salary and the benefits. Professional services, again, these are our dues that we pay. We have KEDCO dues. KEDCO pays dues to the Northeast Indiana Regional Partnership. We pay OrthoWorks dues, US 30 Coalition, and it gives you $185,000. That's down just a bit. I took the $100,000 out for economic development incentive because we've got the revolving loan fund we'll talk about in a minute. Under land and buildings, I left, we had a $350,000 payment, our last payment on the Owens property. So there's no land purchase contemplated for next year. But there is about $500,000 of workforce housing initiative. I don't know what that is, but with our workforce projects coming up, that money is allocated as we need it. We did have $600,000 this year for pavilion remodel donation match. And that actually, I think you heard me say earlier that we're using $300,000 out of here. We had to use some of that money for the Lincoln Sidewalk construction match and the Anchorage Road. With those projects bidding crazy, we had to utilize some of that funds that were set aside all in the same account. So, and that's why we only had $300,000 for the pavilion. You'll notice that the Anchorage Road construction engineering is 80% reimbursable. That money will we'll have to pay that up front, which is $500,000, but we'll get that $400,000 back. That total budget is up 3.3%, but if you take that $400,000 of reimbursable funds that we're going to get back, the edit budget is down a bit. Questions? All right,
Riverboat, if you're up to it?
I'm going them as they come, Lynn,
Okay.
and that would be the riverboat. This is money that we've primarily used to do demolition, which is certainly a form of economic incentive. It's something we can bring to the table. I'm sorry, guys, it's 2235.
So that's
And again, I'd go to the back page. There's one item in there, it's $500,000. It's improvements other than buildings, and it's workforce housing, and it's $500,000 up from $300,000, and that would be demolition money. So that would be incentives. Or other, I mean, it could be used for construction, but we've saved that. Got some pretty big demolition projects, you know, the Yankee building will need demolished, and we've got funds in this year. But as these projects come up, demolition is a big part of this to get this thing going. You know, if we've got the land, oftentimes the demolition is another form of incentive we can offer to the developer to get that land flat and ready to go. So now that takes the, you'll see the fund balances down at the bottom. I beefed that up. I don't know that we'll use that all next year, but it's available if you need to. You know, we're only drawing about $90,000 a year out of the riverboat. So we got about, beginning of this year, we had about $650,000 in there. If we use the 300 with the revenue, we end up with about 436. And then with the 90 revenue, if we spend $500,000 in demo last year, you know, we bled that thing down. But that's what it's for. We don't want that money sitting there. If we need to do economic development projects, doesn't mean we're going to spend it. It means it's available to be spent if something comes up. But that's one fund where we're able to get money for demolition. Questions? All right, let's go to 2250. No,
2256,
2256.
2257, sort of the same.
So 2256 is the unrestricted opioid settlement money. This was a last-minute budget. As we are, our first tranche of money from 22, 23, and 24 totaled up to about 53,000. It was a little more than, I think it was like 58,000. I just put 53,000 in there for machinery and equipment. These are unrestricted funds. I know the PD is contemplating a hood to protect themselves from fentanyl when they're assaying drugs to find out what they are. There's also equipment available that can again, I think it's an assay that looks and can just determine exactly what narcotic we're dealing with. It's a brand new technology. It's about, I think, one unit was about $30,000. So I didn't put anything specific in there. I put the money in so that if Chief comes to Mayor-elect next year and says, we need to buy this, there's the money. It's $53,000. And I know Chief's working with the county and others to try and figure out the most efficient way to deploy this type of technology. Whether we have one and the county has one, or they set them over the different areas of the county so that they're available when they need to be. So that's just an example of how that money could be spent. So this is money that came from the settlement, including next year's revenue, and that money, that has all been laid out. Those amounts have been predetermined. We'll be getting annually for what, Lynn?
18 years.
18 years, small amounts. So, and there will be more to come. There will be different settlements. This was the first of maybe several settlements, so there will be money coming through. And it is divided into unrestricted, which is what we're looking at right now in this budget. And then the next budget, 2257, is restricted. And that money is very specifically has to go primarily to like treatment and prevention programs. It's very specific how that money can be spent. So I just took the 135,000, that's about what will be in that fund next year. No detail, but it would be professional services if we decided to look at a recovery program. There's probably a good chance that we'll work with the county to try and utilize that money in the most efficient manner. But remember, that money has to be spent in a very specific manner. It can't be, it's very restricted, and I have a copy upstairs of the federal guidelines for how that money is to be spent. But it's primarily treatment and prevention programs. So those two budgets, 2256 and 2257, are just basically placeholders for the money that's there. If it needs to be spent, it is available for those purposes. There are other monies that, Chris Vansel got, I don't know, Chief, how much was it? Over $300,000 from an opioid grant that he's going to use with the CARES program. I know the county's got some money. There's a reasonable amount of opioid settlement money coming in, and we've kind of revolved it around, again, the addiction situation and then the CARES program, the mental health component to it as well. So we actually, when I get to ARPA, you'll see where we had Michaela's salary penciled in for next year, but with the money that's come through on that grant, now I can push that out to 25 and 26 because they've already got money to fill that. So it's a really good way to get these programs off the ground, and they're so necessary, as you all know. I know it's a lot to digest. Any questions or concerns about the opioid, again, it's pretty simple. I took what we're going to take in and I put it in the professional services and for the restricted, and for the unrestricted, it was, I think, in equipment. All right. Let's go to the ARPA fund, 2401. So probably the best way to go about this is go to the very last page.
24.
Yeah.
And it's the landscape page, the very last page in that section, 2401. This is a spreadsheet that changes constantly, but I've taken money that we've spent. Lynn and I made our first report to the federal government earlier this year with amounts that we had spent. I think you remember the emergency communication towers. We spent some money on that. We spent some money with Launchpad Initiative. But if you look under 2024, you'll see that we put in this year's budget $250,000 for neighborhood infrastructure. Dustin is using that $250,000 in '23 to do neighborhood infrastructure improvements. And he's got another $250,000 next year.
That'd be like sidewalks and
Gutters.
gutters.
Yep.
Okay.
Other thing, we talked about that. In fact, I tried to solicit from you all for specific projects, but it's probably better to let Dustin use this money in areas where he knows they're problem areas that outside of his normal sidewalk budget. These are infrastructure improvements that he can make in the neighborhoods. So that's the idea, is to try and improve the residential neighborhoods, their infrastructure.
So maybe if we do have some thoughts, or I just maybe chat with Dustin and see if that fits in his.
Absolutely. So there was
Yeah, I
200.
know he mentioned when he met with us that sometimes he knows he's already going to be doing a project, like a street
Exactly.
project, so that's a good time to get that sidewalk or that whatever drainage taken care of too, so that you're not tearing up stuff twice.
Yeah, I was just thinking of an area or two that we don't have any sidewalks that might be
Yes.
a possibility.
Too bad we can't use some of this money to fix some railroad crossings in town.
Yeah.
Don't start, Mike.
That Prairie Street one.
And I was really having a good night.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, wait, what did you say?
This far, could hear
What?
it there, yeah.
Man,
So, the other part of that, I left $17,500 in there, basically for healthcare. And I don't know how that will play out with the new health department, improvements that are coming from the state. That money could be moved around. But the idea was that we've been supporting, early on, we were supporting the vaccination and testing, and some of the translation issues associated with delivery of that service. So I left a small amount of money in if that would come up. But that's just, again, a placeholder. We've talked with the council about small business relief, non-for-profit relief, not small business, non-for-profit relief. And we've got 90,000 in this year and 90,000 in for next year. And there'll be more to come on that. But that's where that money is coming from. That's ARPA funds that we'll dig into a little bit later in this process.
When you say more to come on that, you mean more requests for money or more money coming in?
No,
More information.
more information on how we're gonna
From
go about
Cindy.
that program.
Okay.
Cindy will make that to that.
Okay.
Cindy, I think, is gonna work to make a presentation in September about the non-for-profit funding and how we've changed it this year. And then adding on to that, this one-time non-for-profit relief that we're gonna have available for 23 and 24.
We met with our city attorney just to make sure that everything was kind of copacetic on memorandums of understanding and whatever, so
Yeah.
we're working on that.
That's a work in progress, but this is the placeholder, this is the funding spot for that money. 62.5 has already been promised to Launchpad. We've got 4 tranches of 62.5 over a period of 4 years to help them promote child care initiatives in the community, air quality in public spaces. Again, we're looking at potentially HVAC, big concerns here in City Hall that we may need to address in the future. But so far, that's just again, a holding spot there. And then there's $200,000 in there for an emergency vehicle somewhere in the future as well.
An emergency vehicle, like, just what?
A response vehicle, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that's what's in this year's budget. These monies are just, they're dropped in because those are the areas that we've kind of been focusing on as we've been narrowing this down. These monies have to be earmarked by the end of '24, and they have to be spent by the end of '26. So, right now, you see up in the top left, our local share of ARPA money was $3.4 million. And if we spend everything this year, I don't want to say this wrong. Lynn, do you have the balance in the ARPA fund, 2401? I don't think
At
we,
the end of July, it was 2.4 million, so we've spent,
we spent about $1 million.
yeah.
And we, roughly hope to spend another $1 million this year and maybe then in '24. But those are, again, they're all revenue replacement funds, so they can be spent as we see fit. We've tried to stick to the spirit of those funds and try and leverage those funds.
Yeah,
So-
and the few exceptions are like, nothing for pension, and you can't transfer the money to other funds.
And you can't pay off your debt with them,
Mm-mm.
yeah. So other than that, they're pretty unrestricted. And I did show you, I left a hole in CARES director's salary because of the grant that Chris got and the fire territory got. Was able to move money for Michaela's salary out to 25 and 26. So next year we'll be covered by that CARES money, or not the CARES money, the opioid money. I know it's kind of convoluted, that this budget can continue to be changed, but the point is you want the money allocated, so if something comes up, we don't have to go through an additional appropriation. The money's there. If it's within a category and it needs to be transferred, it can be done. But this has been kind of the plan, and you can follow how we've at least earmarked this money with this spreadsheet. It talks about the different areas we've used. And certainly, myself and of course the new mayor will be open to suggestions. If these neighborhood initiatives would change. But wastewater and stormwater projects were contemplated significantly in the ARPA funds, so felt it important, and we all know that we have no shortage of wastewater projects in this community. So that was always my focus, along with the neighborhood infrastructure and then potentially some not-for-profit relief and child care initiatives. So, questions? Two budgets to go. We've got 2502, which is the edit relief, our revolving loan fund. If you remember right, this is money that we provide as an economic incentive. Sometimes, if they meet the requirements, those loans can be forgivable. 2502, sorry, Jeff. So that's the only line item in there is $200,000. Example was when we did Medardis, which was an extremity, we offered them $50,000 a year if they met their employment goals.
Yeah.
We offered that for up to 5 years. It was $250,000 incentive over 5 years. And in that case, when that artist bought an extremity, they eliminated that. They didn't need that. So that money is still in there. And I'm pretty certain we've already got an incentive with Mentor Media. It was a similar incentive, a new company that's coming in, and I think they're going to be ready to go in October. Similar thing, if they meet their requirements for employment numbers, then it's a revolving loan fund that is forgivable. So that could, and there could be another company come along this year. So right now there's $200,000 in there. That money comes from edit. So that's money from the edit tax. It's not money from the property tax. So if more money needs to be put in there, the edit, that money can come from the edit fund. Questions? All right, and the last one is 4402, which is the CCD fund. cumulative capital development. I'd ask you to go to the spreadsheet, which is the last page. And I think you'll see that I left that budget the same as it was in '23. 50/50 sidewalk programs in there, repair and maintenance for stormwater. If there's a project and they need to repair around a manhole, that's where that 25,000 can come from. Other services and charges, these would be more contracted services. Stormwater project engineer, 50,000. Repairs and maintenance would be contracted, 50,000. Same with curb repairs, sidewalk and curb repairs, 125,000. And then I got $500,000 in there for capital improvement projects, which are basically stormwater projects, linings, extensions, whatever it would be. So you'll see that that amount is the same as it was last year. If you look down at the bottom, you'll see if we spend everything we said we were going to spend this year and next year, there'll still be $600,000 fund balance in there. I think it's important to keep that fund balance up a bit, because this is, if there's an emergency repair, there you got $600,000 to start within that fund. And this is a small rate on the property tax fund, so these are property tax dollars that are used for these capital improvements. Okay, questions? A lot there. Good work. Good work tonight. I know you got a lot to digest. We got plenty of time. We're early August. Probably consider this budget in early October.
I think our first reading is in September, and then the adoption's in October.
The adoption's in October. I will remind you that the next meeting, we're going to meet at 5:30 instead of 6. And I have to go down for the AIM meeting in Southern Indiana, and I'd like to get out of here to maybe not 9 o'clock, maybe 8:30. So that's the reason for that, but 5:30 we'll start, and then the rest of the departments will present.
This might seem like an odd question, but as many years as I've done budgets, I still get one or two underneath the wrong department when I write them all out here. Would it be at all possible when Whitney makes our agenda that she puts down, like, underneath mayor, all the numbers that you're going to cover?
Oh.
So that I make sure that I review all of those before I come.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, I had most of them that I knew were gonna come up tonight, but a couple of them I had the park building under park because it was a park bond instead of under you as the clerk, just like different.
Yeah, and these budgets they change,
They
these
change
these
and they get
opioid
new
budgets were
numbers
brand new.
Brand new, there's a lot
Yeah,
of them.
and I
So-
wasn't, you're not quite sure. I didn't know if that would be under Chief Mayo, like some of the care coordinator stuff, or if it would be under somebody else. So I don't know. It would just be helpful to me if I could just see, like, okay, clerk, and she's gonna cover 0004, but then 3307, 3312, and 4401.
The other way you can tell too, Diane, is look at the signature, who signs it,
Yeah,
is who presents it, so just an FYI. But yeah, I was
I'll
thinking the
talk to
same
Whitney
thing
about
about
that.
that today
yeah,
too.
because, well, if you don't, like, unless you read through the whole book and check every
Right.
signature, so I don't know, it would just be helpful for me. I may be the only budget
No.
for dummies person, but,
No, I went through and I tried to get everyone, but I missed one or two when I
Yeah,
was going
yeah.
through. So.
And I will send out the IT budget spreadsheet. I'll have
or maybe she could just copy it.
Stacy,
give us
I'll just
something.
have her send it out. It's already, I'll have her send it out electronically. Or would you rather have it?
I'd rather have it, because I don't
Okay.
have legal paper to print out on my printer.
Hard copy would be
Yeah.
best, I think.
Okay,
And I have a question, if I
Okay.
may. We have a councilman-elect in the audience. He's been sitting here for 3 hours. And I know he's here to learn. And I think it would be nice for us to supply him possibly with a budget book so
I
he can,
totally agree.
so
I've
he
already
can
thought about that.
follow along and.
Yep, I'll get him,
I thought did you didn't get one, Jurgen? I haven't got it. Oh, I thought Whitney did prepare one for you. Okay.
That would be great.
We have an extra one. Are you getting it, Jeff?
That's what I'm wondering.
I
I
don't,
think there's an extra one on the counter back there.
whose would it be?
Well, it's
Maybe
named on
it's-
the front.
There's one upstairs
Could
for
be
one of the
Jack's.
other media outlets.
Okay.
It might be Jackson.
Yeah.
But Jack probably has it.
I could have had this too.
Excellent thought, Mike. Yeah, I'm sure it would be helpful.
Is there a
I mean,
name
he's
on the
sitting
front,
there
Jeff?
bored out of his mind.
No, it's the 20th.
Oh,
He's hearing all these.
Is that yours from last year?
That's last year.
24. No, this is the one that was in there, sitting in there. No, we don't have one.
What does the tab on the top say?
It's mine.
Oh, that's 23.
Yeah, but I thought maybe,
There's one
seeing
upstairs.
district, maybe they had.
Yeah, there's only one upstairs. We'll get you one. You know, actually, there's an electronic copy. I thought I just saw that in the
Is it in the library?
library.
You need the paper.
But does he have access to?
But that's gonna be hard
You
to
know, I
navigate.
talked to him
I'm
about
just
that
saying.
too, just the council meetings, that he would have access to the agenda.
Yeah, here's a 2023 budget book.
Because you don't have that either, right, board pack? Yeah.
But we're on
We already-
24.
Yeah, we already
Because
talked
you
about
can't,
that.
Up on board.
yeah, you can't see it.
Could we
You
get,
know.
could he get on board pack? Could he?
I'll talk to Stacy
Okay.
about that.
Hey, Joe, I'll give you mine. I have what you need.
Let me see what I can do first, all right? Because there's an extra one up there. Going through and making an extra one. It may be better to just print it off, because it's electronically on here. And you're gonna, if we can get you on board pack, then it's all on there.
I'm sorry, Jurgen, I thought that Whitney had printed one off.
I think in the past, that's happened.
Well, usually we don't know for sure that,
Not at this,
Normally-
not
Yeah,
at
but
this
this year we
stage.
did. I thought we
Good
had.
point.
I thought I talked to you
yeah,
about that, so.
this first year
Okay.
we've known.
So I'll get you guys hard copy of the IT budget. I'm gonna have Whitney put the budget numbers that are being presented and on the next agenda. And then, Jurgen, I'll look into not only the budget book, but maybe board pack for you. There may be a reason we can't do it. Worst comes to worst, I'll have them print the budget off of that. So,
Well, would it have to do with having an email address? I don't think it would.
yeah, I think we should be able to do it, but I'll look into it.
That's
All
what I
right?
talked to him about. I wasn't sure what the rules are.
At any rate, when Whitney runs a copy for Jerry Rush before each meeting, she could run one for Jurgen too.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have two special people.
All right, settle down, everybody. We haven't had a 3-hour meeting in a long time. You guys did very well.
For our age.
Good job, Oakley.
So, with that, anything else you want me to look into?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second that.
Well, you kind of jumped ahead of us here, but if you want to cut off the visitors' comments, that's fine.
Joe, I have a comment.
Yes, you
I'm
do.
gonna have to take my phone call. You guys locked me out. I couldn't get back in.
Oh, it's because the door's locked after 15 minutes after the meeting.
But I got in.
Good.
All right. Now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Diane, Jerry, second. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Do you need a pen?
No. I know you're.
Yeah.
I wanted to tell Julian it took me 22 years to get a key fob. Yeah, I got, I just got one a couple years ago.
Well, good
To
for
get
you.
it in the